Welcome back, you night owls. Tonight we drift into the golden haze of an Egyptian sunrise. The air still clings to the coolness of night, though already the eastern sky burns pink and orange over the endless ribbon of the Nile. You stand at the edge of a small mud brick house, and in the distance you can see palms bowing slightly as the breeze brushes their crowns. A donkey brays like it's auditioning for a morning alarm clock. A rooster crows even though he's late. And somewhere across the river a fisherman is already shoving his little reed boat into the current. You're about to step into the ordinary day of a world more than 3,000 years gone. But right now it feels startlingly present, like you could reach down and smear the wet clay between your toes. You probably won't survive this, let's be honest. The heat, the insects, the food that's more grit than grain, your delicate 21st century stomach is going to riot within 24 hours. But you came here for the ride, not the comfort. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from under a blanket in Sydney, or maybe on a balcony in Toronto at 2 a.m, drop your city and local time down below. I always love seeing the little constellation of where we're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The day begins when the light first touches the Nile. Farmers and fishermen know that every heartbeat of their lives is tethered to this river. Without it, Egypt is nothing but sand and sorrow. With it, they call themselves the people of the two lands. You rub the sleep from your eyes and stumble to your feet, the packed earth under your heel rough as sandpaper. Across the fields, villagers emerge one by one from their low windowless homes, blinking like owls dragged into daylight. The river itself is a silver path this morning, wide and calm. Imagine it. On the banks, you see women crouching to collect water in clay jars, balancing them with an ease that makes your spine hurt just watching. They chatter about the weather, about who stole whose goat, and maybe about whether the gods will be generous this planting season. Overhead, ibises and herons wheel lazily in the new light, stabbing their beaks into the shallows for breakfast. Daily rhythm is dictated by the seasons, but more precisely by the flood cycle. The inundation, that yearly swelling of the Nile, has receded not long ago, leaving a thin film of silt so dark and fertile it almost glitters. You squat down and let the grains slip through your fingers, soft as ash. This mud is the literal bedrock of Egyptian life. Food, wealth and power, all smeared onto your palm. Historians still argue whether the priests truly predicted the Nile's flood levels with magic, or whether they simply got clever with observation, but either way, the villagers trust them more than they'd ever trust a weatherman. Children dart barefoot around you, chasing a scrappy dog that looks like it hasn't bathed since the reign of Ramses III. Their laughter echoes, mixing with the low murmur of cattle being led to graze. In the middle distance, a man sings something off-key while pushing his plough through sticky earth. The tool strapped to a pair of oxen that look unimpressed by their morning assignment. This, more than the pyramids, is Egypt's true monument. Sweaty men, bent backs, and stubborn animals carving lines into soil. Of course, not everyone greets the dawn with mud on their hands. A little farther down the path you see a well-dressed scribe already unrolling his papyrus, squinting at the hieroglyphs he penned last night by flickering oil lamp. His fingers are stained black from ink made of soot and gum, and he looks down his nose at you as though manual labour is beneath him. He isn't entirely wrong. Here, the man who writes holds more authority than the man who reaps. That's one of those sobering realities. If you can't read, your voice doesn't travel far, not in law, not in religion, not in history. Your sweat will evaporate with the morning mist, but the scribe's neat little bird and snake drawings, they might just last 4,000 years. The smell of baking bread snakes through the air and your stomach growls. Women kneel beside dome-shaped mud ovens, slapping dough made of emmer wheat onto the hot walls. Each loaf emerges smoky, cracked, and filled with grit from the millstones. A quirky truth is that Egyptian bread often doubled as dental sandpaper. By the time someone reached 30, their molars looked like worn-down cobblestones. Archaeologists lifting skulls from desert burials found teeth ground to nubs, not because of sugar, but because every bite crunched with powdered stone. You bite into one now, and it's like chewing on a brick. Smile, though. You're part of history. The sun climbs higher. Already you feel sweat collecting in the small of your back, and it isn't even mid-morning. You shade your eyes, watching the horizon blur in the heat. In the distance, a boat loaded with reeds and jars slides slowly upriver, its square sail catching the breeze. The ferryman shouts something inaudible, and a boy leaps off the bank, swimming alongside for fun. Water is joy, but also risk. Crocodiles lurk under those smooth ripples, silent, patient, and always hungry. You wouldn't last 5 minutes if you wandered too far. Locals respect the river like it's both parent and predator. You walk into the village proper, narrow alleys twisting between mud brick houses stacked shoulder to shoulder. Some homes have flat roofs where families slept on hot nights, under stars that shine sharper than any electric bulb could imitate. You can hear a couple arguing through a thin wall. Someone didn't finish their chores, someone else spent too much at the market. Human drama doesn't age. A child clings to her mother's skirt as they hurry past, eyes wide with curiosity at the stranger, you. What's striking in these first hours is how ordinary the extraordinary feels. You came expecting golden masks and monumental statues, but what you find are fleas, clay floors, and the endless shuffling of sandals. Yet inside this ordinariness lies the pulse of a civilization that built wonders. Every grain, every jar, every worn-out hand was another brick in the Empire's invisible foundation. Let's pause just for a second. Imagine the soundscape. Buzzing flies, the groan of donkeys, women pounding laundry against river stones, the splash of oars, the creak of wooden carts, and above it all the relentless hiss of wind sliding through palm fronds. It's messy, noisy, and alive. There's a debate you overhear while wandering past a group of elders perched on stools. They argue, in words half lost to the breeze, about whether the gods demand stricter rituals to ensure the Nile's favour. One swears that if offerings lapse, the floods will shrink. Another insists it's just natural cycles, dismissing superstition. Even here, under blazing sun, you witness an echo of modern debates. Faith versus observation, myth versus pattern. Nobody wins the argument, but they'll carry it into the next sunrise, and the next after that. The smell of dung smoke mixes with roasting fish as you wander closer to the riverbank again. Fishermen haul in their woven nets, heavy with tilapia that writhe and flash silver. One man slaps his catch against the stones to still it, then grins with missing teeth as he displays it proudly. He offers you a bite later, if you don't mind that it'll taste half like mud. And then there are the animals. Goats bleat impatiently, geese hiss like feathered bullies, cats slink between baskets hoping to snag a snack. A boy rides on the back of a slow donkey, whacking its rump with a reed more symbolic than effective. In Egypt, animals are not background. They're co-workers, companions, and sometimes sacred beings. You'd better not kick that cat unless you want half the village glaring daggers at you. As the morning rolls onward, you notice the pace quickens. Farmers head out in groups, tools over shoulders. Women fan cooking fires, preparing stews that will simmer for hours. Traders shuffle goods from one side of the village to another. Life isn't glamorous, but it is relentless. Everyone knows their role, and every role stitches the society tighter. And while all of this unfolds, the desert looms at the edge of vision, vast, golden, and merciless. Just beyond the green ribbon of crops the sand waits. Step too far, and you're swallowed. The Nile may be a lifeline, but the desert is a reminder of mortality, pressing in like a silent crowd. Egyptians live with that contrast every day. Abundance one footstep away from death. Perhaps that's why their culture obsessed so much with balance, order, and the favour of the gods. When survival is this fragile, the smallest ritual, the tiniest amulet, feels like a shield against chaos. The sun stands higher now, shadows shortening, sweat beads along your brow. Villagers retreat briefly into their shaded homes to sip watered beer, to let the midday heat simmer without them. And you, a visitor from centuries away, realise you've been absorbed. This is no longer a museum or a textbook. It's a breathing morning, alive with dust, laughter, worry, and hope. The dawn has passed, but its rhythm will echo through the entire day. Every sound you've heard, every grain you've touched, every bite of stone-flecked bread is a thread in the immense tapestry of Egyptian existence. And as you step deeper into their world, you can't help but feel the tug of connection, strange, familiar, and oddly comforting. The sun climbs higher, burning off the last scraps of morning mist, and your stomach rumbles loud enough to compete with the donkeys. The villagers around you are already shifting toward the next ritual of the day. Breakfast. Forget eggs Benedict or a frothy cappuccino. You are about to discover what really fuels this civilization. You follow the smell first. Smoke drifts up from the little dome-shaped ovens, their mud-plastered walls glowing faintly orange from the heat within. Women crouch low, their muscles moving with rhythm as they slap dough against the oven walls. Each loaf puffs up, blistering and darkening at the edges. Children hover nearby, waiting to grab the first warm hunk of bread that emerges. Bread here is less a side dish and more the heartbeat of life. Without it, nobody works, nobody prays, nobody even argues properly, and you, stomach growling, are ready to join in. A woman tears off a piece and hands it to you. You bite, and instantly grit crunches between your teeth. Milling grain on stone querns has left the flour sprinkled with microscopic fragments. Egyptians lived with this, chewing their way through what was essentially bread and sand. Archaeologists lifting jaws from ancient burials often find teeth ground down to stumps, some riddled with abscesses. Still, the taste isn't terrible. Smoky, earthy, filling. You chew slowly, imagining your dentist shaking his head in despair. Alongside the bread comes onion, big, pungent bulbs sliced raw, their sharpness cutting through the heaviness of the grain. The villagers eat them with gusto, eyes watering but spirits high. You swallow a piece and your sinuses clear instantly. It's like ancient medicine and breakfast in one. And here's a detail that feels almost comic. Egyptian soldiers were once partly paid in onions, because they were considered both food and strength. Imagine your boss offering you onions instead of a paycheck. Though, in fairness, rent here doesn't involve Wi-Fi. And then there's the beer. Forget frothy pints in glass mugs. What you're handed is a thick, porridge-like drink ladled from a clay jar. It's cloudy, warm, and tastes a bit like sour bread dough left in the sun. But it's full of calories, safer than raw river water, and surprisingly filling. Children drink weaker versions, while adults swig the stronger brews like it's liquid bread. You tilt the jar, gulp, and feel the grainy liquid slide thickly down your throat. A burp escapes before you can stop it, and a nearby child giggles at you. Congratulations, you're already blending in. The riverside itself becomes the breakfast table. Families gather near the water, crouching on woven mats or the bare earth. Clay bowls clink, loaves are broken, and laughter hums between mouthfuls. The smell of fish roasting on flat stones joins the chorus. Tilapia and catfish hauled in at dawn sizzle as men turn them carefully with sticks. Some sprinkle coriander or salt if they're lucky enough to afford it, but often it's just plain, charred fish, bones and all. A man offers you a bite, and you find yourself picking scales from your lips as the smoky flavour spreads across your tongue. As you sit there, chewing and swallowing, you realise that this is breakfast for every social level. Pharaohs may dine on honey and meat, priests on figs and dates, but the backbone of Egyptian cuisine remains the same: bread, onions, beer and fish. The simplicity unites the kingdom in ways pyramids never could. A small drama unfolds beside you. A boy drops his loaf into the dust, and his sister instantly snatches it up. She brushes it off quickly, sand on sand, who notices, and stuffs it in her mouth before he can protest. He cries out, but their mother hushes them both, tossing each another onion slice to calm the storm. It's a reminder that family squabbles over breakfast stretch across millennia. The air by the river grows lively. Fishermen mend their nets while chewing. A donkey cart rattles by, piled high with jars of beer destined for a noble household. Women rinse clay pots in the shallows, scrubbing them clean with sand. And nearby, a group of children splash in the shallows, daring each other to go deeper. One woman shouts angrily, warning them about crocodiles. The kids freeze, glance nervously at the calm water, and then retreat, giggling nervously. It's not just a mother's threat. Everyone here knows the river feeds and kills with equal ease, and while you enjoy the warmth of your meal, a thought creeps in. This food, though simple, reflects centuries of experimentation and adaptation. Farmers perfected irrigation canals to grow the grain. Bakers mastered the dome ovens. Brewers learned just how long to leave bread loaves soaking before fermenting into drink. Yet scholars still debate whether the majority of villagers had constant access to enough food, or whether famine was always lurking at the edges of the desert. Records suggest both plenty and scarcity depending on the season and dynasty. In the end, survival was a daily calculation, one bite at a time. A quirky little fact floats into your mind. Egyptians sometimes flavoured their beer with dates or honey, turning it into a sweet, almost dessert-like drink. You wonder how often people snuck an extra jar just for fun, claiming it was for the gods. And yes, beer was often given as offerings in temples because even gods, it seems, appreciate a buzz. You look around at the people sharing this riverside breakfast. Their clothing is simple, men in linen kilts, women in white sheaths, children often naked until older. Sand clings to their skin, hair glistens with oil, and laughter ripples easily despite the grit of daily life. Everyone eats with fingers, tearing, dipping, chewing. No plates, no forks, no napkins, just clay bowls, hands, and a river that doubles as dishwasher. One elderly man catches your eye. He's missing several teeth, but he chews slowly, determinedly on his chunk of bread. He raises his jar of beer to you in a silent toast. You lift yours in return, and for a fleeting moment time collapses. You, an outsider from a faraway century, share a meal with him as though you've always belonged here. A nearby woman hums softly while she works through her bread, a tune that drifts into the air like incense. You don't recognise the melody, but it feels both comforting and eternal. Music here isn't for concert halls. It's woven into the hum of life, carrying across the water as easily as laughter. And then, as quickly as it began, breakfast winds down. Loaves are wrapped in cloth for later, jars are corked with reeds, and children scatter to their chores. The riverbank, lively moments ago, settles into the rhythm of labour. Men head toward fields, women gather tools for grinding, weaving and baking, and elders settle into shaded corners to talk, watch and scold. You, belly full of gritty bread and sour beer, realise that this unassuming breakfast has given you more than calories. It's handed you a lens into their world, a world where food isn't just sustenance but the glue of community, religion and survival. Every loaf broken beside the Nile is a piece of history still warm from the oven, and as you stand, brushing crumbs and sand from your lap, you feel ready to follow the villagers into the next rhythm of their day. The breakfast haze fades into the rising heat, and your full belly lulls you toward the shaded paths that wind back into the village. Smoke from the oven still curls lazily into the air, but the heart of life isn't at the riverbank now. It's in the low, blocky homes, built of nothing more than Nile mud baked hard by the sun. They look unassuming, like squat cubes scattered along the edge of the fields, yet inside these houses throb with voices, smells, animals, and the restless hum of daily survival. You step through a narrow doorway only shoulder high, ducking so you don't brain yourself on the wooden lintel. The transition is instant. Outside, the glare of sunlight bakes your skin. Inside, dimness swallows you in a cool embrace. Dust motes drift in the single shaft of light falling through a hole in the ceiling. The walls press close, plastered rough, smelling faintly of clay and smoke. Welcome to the Egyptian family home. Part shelter, part oven, part zoo, part temple. The floor crunches underfoot, packed earth overlaid with rush mats. Chickens cluck indignantly as they scuttle past your ankles, wings flapping. A goat tugs against a rope tied to one corner, its bleats filling the air like a squeaky door hinge. And in the middle of it all, a family of 5 huddles on low stools, sorting through baskets of lentils, picking out tiny stones that somehow survived the pounding mills. Life is cramped here. The space you stand in is barely larger than a modern bedroom, yet it houses a whole family plus their animals and storage. At night, everyone will pile onto mats along the walls, shoulder to shoulder, and if it's sweltering, some will climb a ladder to the flat roof to sleep under stars, hoping mosquitoes don't find them first. You glance up now, and sure enough, a ladder leans against the wall, its rungs smooth from countless bare feet. The air inside is thick with smoke. A clay stove squats in one corner, glowing faintly where embers linger from breakfast. Above it, soot stains the ceiling like black lace. A woman crouches nearby, grinding grain on a quern, the rasp of stone on stone echoing. She glances up, wipes sweat from her forehead, and goes back to her rhythm. Her young daughter sits beside her, imitating the motions with a smaller stone, her tongue poking out in concentration. The lesson isn't spoken, it's lived. You shift further inside, brushing past a wooden chest pushed against the wall. Its surface is carved roughly with geometric designs, and inside you catch a glimpse of folded linen and a necklace of faience beads. This isn't just storage, it's the family's wealth condensed into a box. Textiles are expensive, jewellery more so, and here they rest under the watch of the household gods. And yes, gods live here too. In a niche carved into the wall, a small clay figure peers at you with wide painted eyes. It's Bess, the dwarf-like household deity, protector of childbirth and laughter, his tongue stuck out in a permanent grimace. Next to him, a faded wooden carving of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of fertility, leans slightly to one side. Together, they guard the family from illness, bad dreams, and perhaps from you, the strange visitor who doesn't quite belong. The line between sacred and mundane here is thinner than a papyrus reed. As your eyes adjust, more details reveal themselves. Jars are stacked along the walls, sealed with mud caps to keep insects out. Some hold beer, others grain, still others dried fish. Above, bundles of garlic and onions dangle from rafters, their smell pungent and reassuring. A reed basket tipped in the corner holds children's toys, a clay doll with black-painted hair, a set of knuckle bones used for games, and a wooden top with faint burn marks from spinning too close to the fire. The family moves around you seamlessly, barely acknowledging your presence, as though visitors dropping by are just another ripple in the stream. The father sharpens a copper blade on a stone, testing its edge with a thumb. His teenage son kneels nearby, weaving palm fibres into a rough mat. Their conversation is light, easy, dotted with laughter. Then, in the background, a quarrel sparks. The goat has chewed through part of a basket, scattering lentils across the floor. The mother scolds it loudly, while the children scramble to retrieve every grain. You smile, realising that "don't let the goat near the food" might be one of humanity's oldest household rules. There's a fringe detail scholars like to point out. Some houses built in wealthier districts had small inner courtyards, with space for trees or even a pool of water. But here, in this humble village, space is luxury. Rooms press against each other like stacked jars. Privacy is non-existent. Your business is everyone's business, and walls are thin enough to prove it. That neighbour's argument you overheard earlier? Perfectly normal. Still, historians debate whether these houses were miserable or comforting. On the one hand, darkness, smoke and crowding could suffocate. On the other, being packed together gave safety, warmth and constant company. Maybe happiness depends less on square footage and more on the laughter that fills it, or the absence of mosquitoes at night. A quirky tidbit drifts through your mind as you peer into the sleeping corner. Wealthy Egyptians sometimes smeared themselves with crocodile dung mixed with honey, believing it worked as contraception. Whether it did is questionable, but you can picture the horrified expression on a modern pharmacist's face if you asked for that recipe. In this village, however, the family relies more on the gods than science to keep their household numbers in check. The roof above your head creaks slightly, and you climb the ladder to peek. Up here, sunlight pours onto the flat clay surface cracked from heat. A sleeping mat lies sprawled across it, along with a jar of water and a small oil lamp. The view stretches across the entire settlement. A scatter of similar homes, ovens smoking, children racing between alleys, dogs sprawled in the dust. Beyond the last row of houses, the fields ripple in green bands, and further still, the desert rises in shimmering waves. From this vantage, you understand how the house is more than shelter. It's anchor, nest, fortress. Even the materials of the walls are alive. Mud mixed with straw, packed into moulds, dried in the sun. You run your hand across the wall and feel it crumble slightly, flaking under your touch. These bricks aren't eternal like stone blocks of pyramids. They melt under rain, though Egypt sees little. Homes must be rebuilt often, layered with fresh plaster, patched after cracks appear. A house here isn't a monument. It's a breathing thing, born, crumbling, reborn. You live inside its heartbeat. You hear a thud behind you, and a young boy laughs as he tosses a ball of clothwood type with twine. He gestures for you to throw it back. You do, clumsily, and it bounces off the goat instead, which bleats its outrage. The boy collapses and giggles, and his mother rolls her eyes, muttering something about chaos in the household. Life here is small-scale comedy, woven into survival. As afternoon heat thickens, the inside of the house becomes both prison and refuge. People retreat to its dimness to escape the sun, but the lack of windows turns air heavy. Flies buzz lazily, landing on sweat-damp skin. A baby cries from the heat, soothed only when his mother fans him with a palm frond. You shift uncomfortably, realizing you're longing for a breeze that won't come. And yet, in this dim, smoky cube, civilization quietly endures. Meals are cooked, prayers are whispered, arguments flare and fade, children learn the motions of survival. Outside, monuments rise, empires expand, wars ignite, but in here, it's the heartbeat of daily life, stubborn and unshaken. When you step back into the alley, blinking against the sun, you carry the smell of smoke in your hair and the echo of clucking hens in your ears. The mud brick homes fade into the background, ordinary and overlooked, but you understand now. Without these crowded, smoky boxes, Egypt would have had no farmers, no scribes, no pharaohs. Greatness begins in grime, under low ceilings, beside tethered goats. And as you move toward the fields where labour awaits, you glance back one last time. The door hangs open, the figures inside silhouetted against dimness, voices rising and falling like a tide. The house breathes on, alive with its people, alive with history. The alleys of mud brick and smoke narrow behind you, and the horizon opens wide. Suddenly it's nothing but fields, shimmering green beneath a sun that already presses like a hammer. The village breath is left behind. Here the air smells sharper, rich with the tang of wet earth and the faint sweetness of ripening grain. And here, in the open plain edging the Nile, you see the truth. Egypt is not stone monuments or golden masks, but soil. Soil dark as spilled ink, soil fine as flour, soil that feeds everything and everyone. You step out onto a narrow ridge of packed mud, one of the countless dikes crisscrossing the land. Beneath your feet, water channels glint like mirrors, narrow streams guided and bullied into precise lines by hands that have done this for generations. A man passes you, his skin glistening, his kilt damp at the hem. He carries a hoe across his shoulder, copper edge shining in the light. His sandals squelch softly as he walks along the water's edge, heading for his plot. He nods at you, neither smiling nor frowning, just another worker on another day, too busy with the Nile's demands to marvel at your strangeness. Barley waves in the faint breeze, its head's heavy, bent forward as if bowing. Flax rises in tidy rows, blue flowers trembling delicately. This land is stubbornly generous. Once the Nile recedes after its annual swelling, it leaves behind a gift so rich it almost feels unfair. The floodwaters spread like liquid fingers, soaking fields, then retreat to reveal a black silt so fertile it gleams. Farmers step into it barefoot, toes sinking in, and scatter seeds by hand. It's messy, rhythmic work. Throw, step, while ducks squawk and wade happily through the furrows. But this abundance isn't guaranteed. The Nile is fickle. Too high a flood and fields drown. Too low and the soil cracks. The gods, priests and rulers all hold their breath each year, waiting to see whether the river blesses or curses. You hear a farmer mutter a quick prayer to Happy, the spirit of the Nile, under his breath as he kneels to scoop a handful of silt. Historians still debate whether the state actually rationed grain in bad years with fairness, or whether nobles hoarded while peasants starved. Records boast of abundant harvests, yet skeletons sometimes whisper of famine. You trail after a group of workers heading into the heart of the fields. Their tools are simple, wooden ploughs tipped with copper, pulled by oxen with patient, melancholy eyes. One man grips the plough handles, groaning with effort as the blade slices the soil. The oxen snort, pulling forward with a creak of leather straps. Behind, furrows open like wounds, dark and moist. A boy follows, tossing seeds into the ridges with swift flicks of his wrist. Each movement is automatic, carved into memory by repetition. These are the unheralded builders of pyramids, not with stone, but with bread. A woman kneels near the irrigation ditch, a wide basket beside her. She's pulling weeds with quick, sure motions, her fingers black with mud. Her youngest child sits in the dirt nearby, chewing on a reed, wide-eyed and content. When the child drops the reed, a goose lunges in to steal it, setting off a shrill honking chase. The woman laughs, briefly breaking the rhythm of toil. For a moment, labour and humour tangle together like sun and shade. You kneel down at the edge of one canal, dipping your hand into the water. It's lukewarm, greenish, with the faint smell of algae. Tiny fish dart between your fingers, and a frog splashes away at your movement. The canals themselves are feats of engineering, dug by hand, reinforced with clay, constantly repaired. Without them, nothing grows. With them, the desert becomes a pantry. It's here, kneeling at the bank, that you feel the paradox of Egypt. A strip of miraculous green in the middle of infinite sand. A shout carries across the field. One farmer has uncovered a fat field mouse burrowing in the grain. With a practiced motion, he snatches it up, grins, and tosses it to a waiting cat. The cat dispatches it with efficiency, licking its paws afterward with bored satisfaction. Cats are more than pets here. They're guardians of the harvest, protectors against vermin. You smile, realising this small drama is the ancestor of every smug house cat that lounges on modern couches. Mid-morning now, and sweat pools on your brow, dripping into your eyes. Farmers wipe their faces with the backs of their arms, streaking mud across skin. The sun doesn't relent, but neither do they. Bread, beer, onions. That meagre breakfast has to carry them through these hours of bending, pulling, lifting. Jars of weak beer sit in the shade of reeds, waiting for a midday gulp, warm but refreshing. A man offers you one. You sip, choking a little on the sour tang. He laughs, slaps your shoulder, and points at his own jar as if to say, "You'll get used to it, or you'll die trying." As you move deeper into the fields, you notice the crops aren't uniform. Here, barley dominates. There, flax stretches, destined to be stripped into threads for linen. A group of women works with sickles, cutting flax stalks and bundling them into sheaves. Their voices rise in song, the melody repetitive, hypnotic. Work songs keep rhythm, making endless motion tolerable. You sway a little as you walk, caught in the cadence. One woman pauses, straightening her back with a groan. She mutters something about her aching bones, and her friend laughs, teasing her about being old already, though she can't be more than 30. Life here is short, wear grinds quickly, yet they find humour even in complaint. You glance at her hands, calloused and cracked, nails ragged from work. Those hands are the real hieroglyphs, writing survival in lines deeper than ink. Off to the side you spot a patch of papyrus swaying, its tall green stalks crowned with feathery heads. A man harvests them with a curved blade, bundling them tightly. Papyrus isn't food, it's paper, rope, mats, boats. Entire industries sprout from these stalks. The scent is fresh, grassy, almost sweet as he slices and ties. The sound of stalks snapping echoes across the still air, and always the desert looms. Beyond the green belt, golden sand blazes, shimmering in heat. A hawk circles overhead, its cry sharp, carried on the wind. You realise this abundance is fragile, a fingernail width away from collapse. One failed flood, one miscalculation, and the green shrinks back, leaving hunger gnawing at the edges of villages. It explains the almost obsessive devotion to order, ritual and gods. When the line between feast and famine is this thin, you cling to every reed of control. Historians often wonder whether the labourers here cursed their toil or embraced it. Official records depict cheerful workers, content with bread and beer, but bones tell another story. Spines bent, joints worn, malnutrition lurking. Perhaps both were true. Perhaps laughter and complaint shared the same furrow, as inseparable as mud and seed. A quirky belief you overhear while resting under a palm. One farmer insists that singing to barley helps it grow taller. His neighbour scoffs, saying it's nonsense, but then hums under his breath anyway, just in case. Even in ancient fields, superstition slips between rows like an unseen harvest. You chuckle softly. You'd probably hum too if your dinner depended on it. By midday, the light has become merciless. Shadows vanish. Workers retreat briefly under palm groves, sitting in tight circles. Bread loaves are unwrapped, onions peeled, beer jars uncorked. Children dart between them, sticky with sweat and dust, nibbling fish dried to a leathery toughness. The chatter is constant. Gossip about who's late with their taxes, jokes about someone's stubborn donkey, arguments about whether this year's flood was higher or lower than the last. It's as lively as any modern lunch break, minus the smartphones. And when rest is over, they rise again. Tools lifted, baskets carried, songs resumed. The fields swallow them once more, rows alive with human motion. You watch from the ridge, the scene stretching far. Hundreds of backs bent, hundreds of hands scattering, pulling, lifting. This isn't grandeur carved into stone. This is the invisible engine churning grain into life, flax into cloth, papyrus into words. As the sun drifts past its peak, heat quivers above the land, and you feel your own body sag. But the farmers press on, steady and relentless. Each stroke of hoe, each cut of sickle, is another stitch binding the Nile's gifts to human need. And you realise, as sweat stings your eyes and dust coats your tongue, that this, more than pyramids, more than statues, is what daily life in Egypt really was. Endless, backbreaking, communal, sacred in its ordinariness. When you finally turn away, following a path back toward the village, the fields stretch behind you like a green sea under a burning sky. The farmers keep working, voices faint in the distance, songs threading through heat. The Nile gleams nearby, silent witness to every seed scattered, every loaf baked, every life tethered to its pulse. And as you walk, the grit of barley chaff clings to your skin, marking you as part of their harvest, even if only for a day. The fields fade behind you as you follow a path that winds toward the beating heart of another kind of labour, the world of the artisans. The air changes here. Instead of the earthy sweetness of wet silt and barley, the breeze carries the sharp tang of cut wood, the metallic whiff of hammered copper, the musty dust of powdered stone. You can hear it before you see it. The rasp of saws, the steady clack of hammers, the rhythmic thump of mallets against chisels. This isn't the Nile's open sprawl. It's a hive of sound, smell and sweat, where hands transform raw matter into everything from pots to temples. You step into a narrow lane lined with workshops, each little more than an open-fronted room facing the street. They're small, dark and cluttered, yet each one is alive with motion. In the first, potters hunch over spinning wheels, their fingers slick with clay pulled from the riverbank. The wheel spins, a shapeless lump rises, and slowly, impossibly, it becomes a vessel. Tall jars, squat bowls, delicate cups. They spring into being under hands scarred with years of practice. The floor is littered with shards of failed attempts, but no one mourns the broken. Clay is cheap and the wheel spins again. A boy, barely more than 10, crouches beside the potter, watching, his own clumsy attempts drying in the sun outside. Apprenticeship begins early here, often before childhood even feels over. One day he'll shape amphorae sturdy enough to carry beer for armies or jars fine enough to hold ointments for queens. For now, he scrapes the wheel clean and stirs the slip, earning his place in the workshop's rhythm. Next door, carpenters hammer wood stripped from imported cedar. Egypt itself has little lumber worth carving. Palm trunks splinter too easily, so traders float cedar from Lebanon down the coast. The scent is resinous, thick, almost sweet. Men saw planks with copper blades, each stroke slow and deliberate, for wood is precious. A man shapes a chair leg, its curve elegant, while another assembles a chest, fitting panels together with wooden pegs and glue made from animal sinew. Furniture like this will outlive its makers. Some pieces buried in tombs will survive 4,000 years, waiting to dazzle museum goers in distant lands. The noise grows as you wander deeper. Metalworkers huddle around a charcoal furnace, sparks spitting into the smoky air. Bellows wheeze as boys pump them, forcing air into the coals until copper glows red hot. The metalworkers move with precision, gripping tongs, striking molten lumps on stone anvils. Sweat streaks their faces, steam hisses as water quenches the metal. They're crafting blades, sickles, chisels and ornaments, each strike of the hammer shaping not just copper but society's survival. The rhythm is hypnotic, clang, hiss, until you realise your own heartbeat has synced with it. In the corner, a man etches patterns into a small bronze mirror, humming under his breath. Another file smooths the edge of a blade meant for harvest. These tools may seem humble, but they're as critical as pyramids. Without them, no grain is cut, no cloth is sewn, no stone is carved. Historians often debate whether metalworkers were respected or seen as dangerous, dabbling in fire and transformation. Perhaps they were both, revered and feared, their craft walking the line between art and alchemy. A little farther down, the smell shifts again. Stone dust fills the air, coating your tongue chalky and dry. Sculptors kneel before blocks of limestone and granite, chisels ringing as they strike. The blocks look unyielding, eternal, but bit by bit shapes emerge. The curve of a jaw, the fold of a robe, the outline of a falcon's wing. Some carve colossal statues destined for temples, others chip small amulets no larger than your thumb. Both matter. A statue may awe thousands, but a single amulet might comfort a child or ward off a fever. One carver squints at you through dust-caked lashes. He gestures proudly toward his half-finished work. A cat statue, sleek and dignified. You recognise the devotion. Cats aren't just mouses here, they're divine. He strokes the stone head as if it might purr. His pride radiates, and you nod in acknowledgement. His grin splits wide, white teeth gleaming through the grey smear on his face. Across the lane, weavers sit at looms, their fingers darting, the rhythm soft but insistent. Threads cross, tighten, pull, linen blooming into fabric. The flax you saw earlier in the fields ends its journey here, transformed into cloth white as cloud or dyed with plant pigments into subtle hues. Rolls of linen pile in corners, some coarse for farmers' kilts, others fine enough for nobles' gowns. A woman sings as she works, her voice weaving through the clack of the loom. Her toddler plays beside her, chewing a spindle like it's a toy. Work and life blend seamlessly. No separation, no pause. The street is chaos, but organised chaos. Each sound has its place, each craft its rhythm. This is the industrial district of the ancient world, the beating engine behind temples, homes and tombs. The artisans here are not rich, but they're indispensable. Without them, the fields produce food, but not jars to hold it. Wealth, but not coffers to guard it. Faith, but not idols to embody it. They are invisible to history's monuments, yet imprinted on every surface. And yet debates still swirl among scholars about their status. Were they respected as skilled specialists, or treated as replaceable labourers, sweating under overseers' eyes? Evidence points both ways. Wages in bread and beer suggest steady livelihoods, but texts also describe punishment for mistakes. Perhaps, like most workers through time, they were vital but undervalued, admired only when absent. One quirky tidbit drifts into your ear from a gossiping apprentice. Some artisans believed licking the dust of malachite or lapis lazuli gave visions of the gods. More likely it just gave them stomach cramps, but the rumour persisted. You imagine a young carver daring his friend, both coughing blue dust while claiming divine inspiration. Humans will find their shortcuts anywhere, even if they lead straight to the latrine. The afternoon sun slants down, casting long shadows across the workshop street. The heat inside the forges and ovens only intensifies. Faces gleam with sweat, arms ache, yet the work never halts. A shipment of new copper ingots arrives by cart, oxen lowing under the load. A merchant argues over payment with the metalworkers, voices rising, hands gesturing sharply. Nearby, a potter curses loudly as a vessel cracks in the kiln, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Life here is not quiet devotion. It's noisy, impatient, passionate. Yet amid the cacophony, there's beauty. A finished jar gleams in the sun, its surface painted with lotus flowers. A chair emerges elegant, curved, perfectly balanced. A necklace of faience beads catches the light, glowing blue like fragments of sky. For every sweat-soaked hour, a piece of grace enters the world. You realise this is Egypt's true artistry. Not frozen statues alone, but hands carving life out of raw matter, daily and endlessly. As dusk creeps closer, the workshops finally begin to quiet. Tools are laid aside, fires banked, looms covered. Apprentices sweep floors, gather scraps, douse coals. The artisans stretch sore backs, rub stiff fingers, and step out into the cooling air. Some carry home finished wares to trade, others simply slump against walls, drinking from jars of beer, letting fatigue settle. Children run to greet them, tugging at kilts, demanding attention. Laughter returns, softening the day's edge. You walk away with the sound of hammers still echoing faintly in your ears, the smell of wood smoke and copper dust clinging to your clothes. Behind you the workshop stands silent for now, but tomorrow the chorus will resume. The Nile may give life, but it is here, in these cramped rooms and noisy streets, that life is shaped, polished, painted, and prepared for both the living and the dead. The clang of hammers fades as you wander away from the artisan's street, and another kind of rhythm takes over, not the rhythm of muscle and sweat, but of pens scratching across papyrus. The noise here is quieter, but no less insistent. You've stepped into the domain of scribes, those thin, ink-stained figures who hold more power than their humble benches and reed pens might suggest. You hear it before you see it, the soft rasp of rush pens against papyrus, the occasional sigh of frustration when ink blobs, and the low murmur of voices reciting words as they write them. The space isn't glamorous. It's a shaded courtyard tucked near the temple complex, with mats spread on the ground and low wooden desks balanced on knees. Boys sit cross-legged, backs bent, faces pinched with concentration. The teacher, an older scribe with a shaved head and an expression that could curdle milk, walks slowly among them, reed in hand, not for writing, but for smacking the inattentive. You squat nearby, watching. One boy whispers the symbols as he scribbles, little birds, twisted ropes, seated men, squiggles that look like waves. His tongue, the tools are deceptively simple. A reed pen chewed at one end to soften the fibres, a palette of black and red ink, black for body text, red for headings and corrections, a roll of papyrus sliced from river reeds, pressed and dried into sheets. You watch one boy carefully mix his ink from soot and gum, the smell faintly sweet. He dips, breathes, and writes, each stroke deliberate. To you it looks like art, to him it's survival. You shift your gaze to the senior scribes seated apart from the pupils. Their hands move faster, confidently, copying official decrees, recording grain tallies, drafting letters for nobles who can't write their own names. Their voices are steady as they murmur aloud the words they inscribe, a rhythm that feels almost like incantation. And perhaps it is, because with each symbol they weave order into chaos, giving permanence to fleeting thoughts. One scribe catches your eye. He's thin, his skin browned by sun, but his fingers are elegant, precise. He sets down his pen, stretches and gestures toward the rows of papyrus scrolls stacked in a basket. He points at them, then taps his chest, pride clear. These scrolls, he's telling you, are his legacy. Farmers leave behind fields, artisans leave behind pots, but scribes leave behind voices that might be read centuries later. And indeed, historians still argue whether scribes wielded more influence than priests. Without them, no temple inventory is kept, no tax records exist, no contracts survive. Priests may chant, kings may command, but it is the scribe who immortalizes their words. That power is subtle but enduring. A king's voice can fade in the air, a scribe's ink can linger for eternity. You peer over a boy's shoulder as he copies a proverb. A man who neglects knowledge is like a broken jar. The boy grimaces as he smudges the line, and you suppress a chuckle. If you'd grown up here, you'd have spent your youth memorizing lines like that instead of multiplication tables. And if you failed, well, the fields always need more backs. Literacy isn't a right, it's an escape hatch from endless toil. A quirky tidbit filters into your mind. Scribes sometimes wrote notes on shards of pottery, called ostraca, instead of expensive papyrus. These fragments, broken from jars, became scrap paper for practice, grocery lists, even snide jokes about neighbours. Imagine scrolling through a feed of clay fragments, each one scrawled with complaints, doodles, or crude caricatures. Humanity has always found ways to waste writing skills on gossip. The heat of the afternoon presses down, but the scribes sit in shade, their labour considered too precious to risk in the fields. Bread and beer arrive for them on trays carried by apprentices. A farmer trudging past scowls briefly. His back aches from ploughing, yet these men sit cushioned, hands soft, bellies full. Resentment simmers, but so does respect. Everyone knows the ink-handed men speak with the voice of power. One elder scribe, his shoulders hunched from years of writing, sets down his pen and begins dictating to a younger man. His voice carries authority, yet gentleness too. He's composing a hymn to the sun god, praising its warmth and order. The younger scribe writes quickly, pausing only to dip his pen. The words are fluid, soaring, yet bound by metre. In this moment, you realise scribes are not merely bureaucrats, they are poets, priests, chroniclers. They stitch beauty into the fabric of bureaucracy, making even lists sing. Still, not all writing is lofty. Beside the hymn, another scribe tallies grain shipments, each line a dry notation. 2 sacks barley from Menna, 3 sacks flax from Hori. He yawns as he writes, bored yet precise. Without these notes, taxes vanish into dust, trade dissolves into chaos. Even boredom here becomes a kind of immortality. The debate among the boys grows louder now. One argues that the symbol for sun should always face left. Another insists it depends on context. The teacher sighs, raps both on the head, and orders silence. But you grin. It's the same everywhere, isn't it? Students bickering about technicalities, convinced their version is correct. They don't know it, but their squabble echoes across centuries, down to modern scholars still arguing over translations. The continuity is almost comforting. Nearby, an apprentice leans back, exhausted, his papyrus smudged with ink fingerprints. He sighs dramatically, muttering that he'd rather herd goats than memorize another proverb. His friend elbows him, whispering that goats don't feed you when you're old, but scrolls do. Both laugh softly before the teacher glares, silencing them. Humour survives even in the strictest classrooms. By late afternoon, the courtyard grows hushed again. Scrolls are rolled and tied with twine, palettes cleaned, pens rinsed in jars of water. The teacher dismisses the pupils, who scramble gratefully to their feet, legs stiff, eyes aching. They'll run to play now, their games mixing dust with laughter, but tomorrow morning they'll return to scratch owls and snakes again. The senior scribes remain, still bent to their work. They have no dismissal, no recess. Their hands will ache until sunset, their eyes blur in fading light, but their ink will outlast them. The papyrus they fill might one day be burned, lost, or buried, but some will survive. Some will whisper their voices across millennia, telling future strangers what grain cost, or how gods were praised. That's their quiet gamble. Labour now, immortality later. As you step back into the street, the smell of ink clings faintly, mingling with dust and sweat. You glance once more at the scribes, silhouettes hunched against the sun, reeds scratching like insects in the silence. They look fragile, but their power is ironclad. Armies may march, kings may reign, priests may bless, but without scribes, no one remembers. And you, ink-smudged in spirit, walk away with the echo of their scratching in your ears, knowing that in ancient Egypt, the pen truly was sharper than the sickle. The quiet scratch of reed pens fades behind you as you drift toward another heartbeat of Egyptian life. One louder, sweatier, and infinitely more chaotic. The marketplace. Even from several streets away, the sound reaches you first. Voices layered over voices, sellers shouting prices, animals bleating, laughter, quarrels, and the occasional clatter of a jar smashing on stone. Then the smells hit. A swirling mix of fresh bread, pungent onions, fish left out too long, incense burning to mask the fish, and sweat from bodies packed shoulder to shoulder. If the scribe's courtyard was order and discipline, this is its opposite. Messy, unpredictable, and alive. The market sprawls across a dusty square where stalls are nothing more than reed mats spread on the ground, or makeshift tables propped with uneven legs. Merchants wave their hands dramatically, thrusting their wares at passers-by. A man lifts a string of dried fish like a trophy, shouting promises that they'll taste fresher than anything caught this morning. A woman rattles a jar of spices, the scent of coriander and cumin drifting outward like a lure. Donkeys shuffle nervously through the crowd, their carts piled with vegetables, clay jars, or sometimes just squealing children who are delighted to ride. You squeeze between 2 stalls and almost trip over a basket of dates. The vendor scowls, but then forces a smile, offering you one to sample. It's sticky, golden brown, and sweet enough to make your teeth ache. You thank him with a nod, brushing your fingers clean against your kilt, and immediately regret it as they stay tacky. Around you, people chew noisily, bargaining with mouths full, tasting before they buy. A cluster of women gathers near a grain seller. He scoops barley from a sack into jars, measuring with a wooden scoop that seems intentionally generous one moment, stingy the next. They argue, hands on hips, voices rising. He protests innocence, swears by the gods, insists the scoop is honest. The women glare but hand over coins anyway, copper or rings of silver depending on their luck. Money here isn't always coin. Sometimes it's barter, bread for fish, cloth for oil. The exchanges blur, as fluid as the Nile itself. Nearby, a boy weaves through the crowd with a basket of onions balanced on his head. He shouts his wares in a voice cracking with adolescence, dodging elbows and goats alike. A goat lunges for his basket, catching an onion before he jerks it away, cursing loudly. The crowd laughs, some tossing him sympathetic glances, others snickering at his misfortune. Markets thrive on spectacle as much as trade. You pause near a butcher's stall. Flies cluster thick over the cuts of goat and goose, buzzing like a chorus. The butcher swats lazily with a bundle of reeds, uninterested in perfection. A woman examines a cut, frowns and points out too much fat. They haggle, their voices sharp but oddly friendly, like a game both know the rules of. Eventually she pays, he wraps the meat in a strip of papyrus, and she departs muttering about being cheated. He grins, shrugs, and calls the next customer. There's entertainment too. A juggler performs at the edge of the square, tossing clay balls high, his movements fluid. Children gather, clapping in delight, while adults pause briefly before returning to bargaining. A musician plucks at a lute, singing verses about love, drink, and the Nile's generosity. His hat lies on the ground with a few copper coins glinting inside. People toss more coins when the chorus makes them laugh, and he winks, already preparing the next line. The smells intensify near the fishmongers. You wrinkle your nose. Fish caught at dawn, now baking under the noon sun. The stench is overwhelming. Yet people crowd here, because fish is cheaper than meat, and protein is protein. A man slices open a tilapia with a practiced hand, guts spilling onto the ground where a cat darts in to lap eagerly. He doesn't shoo it away. It's part of the clean-up crew. You edge past quickly, your stomach lurching, while the locals argue cheerfully about price. Everywhere, voices rise in arguments. Was this flax truly dyed with indigo, or just soaked in river mud? Is this honey pure, or watered down with syrup? The debates are endless, and you can't tell if half of them are serious or just performance. Historians still wonder whether ancient Egyptian markets were tightly regulated, or mostly left to self-policing. Official texts boast of fairness, but scenes like this suggest bargaining and trickery ruled the day. You pause at a spice stall, where the air is rich with unfamiliar scents. Cinnamon, myrrh, fenugreek. Some are imported from distant lands, carried by caravans across deserts or by ships hugging the coast. The vendor proudly explains their virtues: cinnamon for flavour, myrrh for perfume, fenugreek for medicine. He offers you a pinch to taste, and you sneeze violently as the powder tickles your nose. The crowd laughs, and the vendor claps you on the back, delighted by the attention. A quirky tidbit emerges as you watch a seller of cosmetics hawk his wares. He demonstrates how his green malachite powder brightens the eyes, how his black coal liner protects against the sun. Women crowd around, eager, while men pretend not to watch, but sneak glances. One woman smirks as she applies the liner with a reed, then struts proudly through the market. You realise makeup here is less about vanity and more about survival, shielding eyes from glare and skin from sun. Still, the confidence it sparks is timeless. Amid the bustle, you notice a group of officials standing stiffly at one corner, scribes recording notes as they watch the traders. They're ensuring taxes are collected or perhaps simply being seen. Their presence reminds everyone that the pharaoh's gaze stretches even here, into the sweat and stink of trade. People bow slightly, murmur respect, but return quickly to their haggling. Respect is mandatory, survival is urgent. You drift toward the fabric sellers, where rolls of linen sway in the breeze. Some are rough, coarse, meant for farmers' kilts. Others shimmer faintly, fine enough for nobility. A woman runs her fingers along one bolt, sighing with desire, but shakes her head when the price is quoted. She settles for cheaper cloth, though her eyes linger wistfully on the finer piece. Even in ancient Egypt, window shopping exists. The crowd shifts suddenly as a fight breaks out near the grain stalls. Two men shout, accusing each other of short measure, shoving until a jar tips and grain spills into the dust. Children dart in, scooping handfuls before anyone stops them. Officials hurry over, scribes recording names, while neighbours pull the men apart. The argument simmers down, leaving both fuming but cowed. The spilled grain remains in small fists and underfoot, a reminder of how easily wealth scatters. Through it all, laughter rises as often as anger. The market is theatre as much as economy. People come not just to buy and sell, but to gossip, flirt, argue and perform. You overhear one woman joking that her husband spends more time at the beer stall than at the fields. Another retorts that at least her husband doesn't gamble away their onions. Both cackle, slapping each other's shoulders. Humour oils the machinery of survival. The afternoon sun shifts. Shadows lengthen, but the noise never quite fades. Merchants pack up slowly, reluctant to surrender potential customers. Leftover fish are salted and stored, bread stacked into baskets, fabric rolled tight. The square gradually empties, though children still chase each other, and musicians play until the last coin drops. Donkeys bray, carts creak, voices drift off down alleys. The dust settles, but faint smells linger, clinging to your clothes like memories. As you walk away, the market echoes in your head, a collage of sound and scent, argument and laughter. It wasn't just commerce, it was connection, the pulse of community. The fields may feed, the temples may awe, but it's here, in the noisy square of trade, that Egypt breathes in all its messy, glorious humanity. The chatter of the market fades into memory as you walk along a wide avenue lined with mud brick walls, and then suddenly the world expands again. Before you rise is something so massive, so deliberate, that it seems less built than grown from the earth itself. A temple, its pylons tower like mountains of stone, decorated with painted reliefs that blaze in the sunlight, kings smiting enemies, gods towering above mortals, priests parading in endless procession. After the cramped alleys, after the noisy stalls, the scale of this place is overwhelming. Here is where daily life tilts upward, toward the divine, and every breath feels heavier with expectation. The entrance alone could silence you. 2 pylons rise, flanking a gateway wide enough to swallow your entire street back home. Flags whip from tall poles snapping in the wind, their colours vibrant against the pale sky. In the shadows of the pylons, guards stand at attention, spears glinting. A line of villagers shuffles forward with baskets balanced on their heads, jars hugged to their chests, bundles carried in arms thin from field labour. They come not for spectacle, not for bargaining, but to hand over pieces of their survival to the gods who, they hope, keep the Nile steady and the harvest full. You slip into the line. The crowd moves slowly, almost reverently, though the heat is merciless. A boy in front of you carries a basket of fish still twitching faintly, their scales glimmering. His mother hushes him when he fidgets, whispering that the god will be pleased. Behind you, a man shifts a heavy jar of beer from one shoulder to another, muttering about his aching back. Even offerings are back-breaking work. The gateway swallows you, and suddenly shade envelops you like cool water. The courtyard inside is vast, its stone floor smooth beneath your feet, its colonnades lined with columns carved into lotus and papyrus stalks. Incense coils lazily upward from braziers, filling the air with a sweetness that masks sweat and animal musk. The walls are alive with painted hieroglyphs, rows upon rows of stories etched into eternity. Birds, snakes, men, gods, all frozen mid-gesture, as though whispering secrets only scribes can unlock. At the far end of the courtyard, priests move in careful rhythm. Their heads are shaved, their linen robes spotless despite the dust. One carries a censer, swinging it so that smoke billows in clouds. Another chants, his voice echoing against the stone. The sound is low, hypnotic, neither song nor speech, something in between. The people kneel, placing their offerings at the priest's feet. Fish, onions, bread, jars of beer, bundles of reeds, even small clay figurines. Each item is received solemnly, recorded on a tablet by a scribe seated nearby, his reed pen scratching steadily. You kneel too, though you have nothing to give. You glance at the offerings already piled high, bread stacked like bricks, jars gleaming with condensation, onions pungent in the heat. The priests bow, lift a few items, and carry them toward the inner sanctum, disappearing through a doorway shadowed and forbidding. The crowd murmurs, some whispering prayers, others bowing their heads so low they nearly touch the stone floor. What happens beyond that doorway is mystery. Only priests and pharaohs may enter the deepest sanctum where the god's statue waits. You strain to imagine it. A small chamber, dark but for oil lamps, heavy with incense, and at its heart, a figure carved of gold or ebony, jewelled eyes glinting. The statue is not merely an image, it is the god's presence embodied, a fragment of divine essence anchored in stone. The priests bathe it, clothe it, feed it, as though it lives, and in their care, the entire balance of Egypt rests. Historians still debate how much the common people believed in this direct presence. Were they convinced the god literally ate the bread, or did they see the ritual as symbolic? The truth may lie somewhere in between. For the farmer dropping off onions, it's less theology and more insurance. Better to give too much than risk too little. You wander along the colonnade, running your hand across cool stone. The reliefs under your fingers depict ceremonies, festivals, offerings stretching in endless repetition. You pause at one showing dancers with arms raised, their bodies bent in arcs of motion. You realise temples weren't silent places of devotion alone. They pulsed with music, dance, feasting, sometimes so exuberant that the line between worship and revelry blurred. Gods, after all, could be stern but also celebratory. The scent of incense deepens as you approach another chamber. A priest is pouring oil over a small altar, chanting as the flames leap higher. The crowd hushes, watching. The firelight flickers across their faces, etching them in gold and shadow. A woman beside you clasps her hands, whispering a plea, perhaps for her sick child, perhaps for a good harvest. Her lips tremble as she speaks, her eyes glistening. Faith here is intimate, urgent, desperate. You feel like an intruder, yet also caught in the raw humanness of it. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Temple priests sometimes used honey as an offering, spreading it on altars so it would drip down slowly, golden and sticky. It wasn't just about sweetness. Honey was believed to be divine, a substance that never spoiled, like eternity in edible form. You picture ants swarming the offering later, and you chuckle quietly, imagining the gods tolerating a few insect guests. Temples weren't just religious centres, they were economic giants. The offerings you see piled here won't vanish into divine mouths. They'll be redistributed, feeding priests, workers, and sometimes the poor. Temples owned land, managed workshops, employed scribes, artisans, and labourers. They were banks, warehouses, political engines. A villager kneeling here is both praying and paying taxes in kind. The line between devotion and bureaucracy is thinner than incense smoke, and politics lurks in every shadow. The pharaoh's name is etched boldly on walls, proclaiming his piety, his gifts to the gods. His face appears alongside deities, the message clear. He rules not just with power, but with divine approval. The temple reinforces this daily, every offering, every chant a reminder that the ruler and the gods are entwined. Dissent here would feel like blasphemy. Still, whispers rise in the crowd. One man mutters that last year's flood was low, despite endless offerings. Another shakes his head, warning silence. Doubt exists even here, but it's buried under ritual, like cracks plastered over with bright paint. Faith is not uniform. It's a spectrum, stretching from fervent belief to skeptical compliance. As the ceremony ends, priests sprinkle water from the Nile across the kneeling crowd. Droplets strike your skin, cool and startling. The people murmur blessings, touching the water to their foreheads, their lips. You mimic them, feeling the grit of river silt in the droplets. It's a small act, yet it binds you briefly to them. The sun lowers, painting the pylons in crimson light. The crowd disperses slowly, drifting back toward their homes, their fields, their workshops. Priests carry the last offerings inward, while scribes tally numbers by fading daylight. The temple looms behind you, colossal, its shadows stretching like fingers across the ground. It will remain long after you leave, absorbing prayers, swallowing offerings, echoing with chants. You walk away, the scent of incense still in your hair, the sound of chants lingering in your ears. The marketplace fed bodies, but here, in the temple, something deeper was fed. Hope, fear, awe, and the unshakable conviction that gods walked alongside mortals. Whether true or not, the belief itself shaped every dawn, every harvest, every law. And as the pylons shrink behind you, you realize, in Egypt, to live meant to give, to kneel, to whisper into the smoke, and to hope that the gods listened. The temple's incense clings faintly to your skin as you return toward the village, but another smell quickly overpowers it. dust, sweat, and the warm, sun-baked scent of children who have been running in circles for hours. The marketplace has quieted. The priests have withdrawn to their sanctuaries, and now the open spaces of the village belong to the youngest Egyptians. Their laughter ripples through the alleys, shrill and unrestrained, cutting through the heavy evening air like bird song. You pause at the edge of a square where a group of children chase each other, bare feet thudding on packed earth. One boy clutches a ragged bundle of cloth tied into a ball, while others lunge to snatch it. They tumble in the dust, their bodies colliding, then leap up again, howling with delight. The ball soars, crooked but airborne, and for a moment the village rings not with labour or prayer, but with the timeless sound of play. Egyptian children, like children everywhere, turn the simplest scraps into treasures. You watch a girl spin a wooden top, its charred stripes whirling until it wobbles and falls. Two younger boys clap wildly as it slows, then beg her to spin it again. Nearby, another child flips knucklebones in the dirt, her small hands tossing and catching with practiced precision. These bones, scavenged from the joints of goats, serve as both game pieces and gambling tokens for adults. For children, they're pure amusement, a way to prove dexterity and luck. One boy pulls a doll from his belt, a crude figure of clay with painted eyes and black wig made from strands of palm fibre. He holds it up proudly, showing it off to his friends. They tease him mercilessly, calling it his bride, but he grins and dances it across the dirt anyway. The girls laugh, then reveal their own dolls, slightly finer with movable limbs made of wood. They sit together, acting out scenes of mothers cooking, fathers scolding, siblings arguing. Their voices mimic adult tones with eerie accuracy, proof that play is the first rehearsal for life. Historians still puzzle over how much free time children truly had. Official records speak little of play. They emphasize training, chores, obedience. Yet artifacts, dolls, balls, carved animals, whisper of hours spent in games. Perhaps children stole moments between tasks, or perhaps adults tolerated these escapes as natural. Either way, the evidence of joy survives, etched into clay toys and worn footprints. A quirky tidbit floats into your mind as you watch the games. In the heat of ancient Egypt, children often wore little or no clothing until they were older. Practicality trumped modesty. You chuckle as a toddler runs past, squealing with glee, a simple necklace of beads bouncing as he moves. His mother barely glances up. She's seen this scene countless times. Later, he'll wear a small linen kilt like the older boys, but for now his carefree play is unhindered. Children don't just mimic family life, they also echo the world of gods and kings. A group gathers sticks, drawing lines in the dirt to mark out an imaginary temple courtyard. One child declares himself pharaoh, strutting with exaggerated grandeur, while others kneel and offer gifts of pebbles and twigs. Another acts as a priest, chanting nonsense syllables that sound suspiciously like his father's real prayers. The game dissolves into laughter when the pharaoh demands too many offerings and gets tackled by his subjects. Through giggles, you glimpse the seeds of social order being rehearsed in miniature. Wrestling is another favourite. Two boys square off, crouching low, circling, eyes bright with challenge. They lunge, grapple, tumble in a tangle of limbs. Dust clouds rise, cheers erupt. One pins the other, triumph written across his face. Then they both laugh, clasp hands, and reset for another round. Wrestling isn't just play, it's training, building strength for future work or perhaps future soldiering. The line between game and preparation is blurred, as it always is for the young. Girls too wrestle and race. One pair dashes barefoot down the lane, skirts flying, braids bouncing. They reach the wall, touch it, and sprint back, lungs heaving, laughter bubbling. The adults nearby smile indulgently, though one woman calls out for them to fetch water afterward. Play here is tolerated but tethered. Every moment of fun must bend eventually toward duty. Even music finds its way into their games. A boy bangs two sticks together in clumsy rhythm, while others clap and chant a tune. The words are silly, half nonsense, half parody of songs heard in the market. They dance in a circle, stomping in dust, until one collapses dramatically, earning roars of laughter. The joy is contagious. You find yourself swaying to the offbeat rhythm, your shadow joining their circle for a heartbeat. Not all play is harmless. A sharp cry rings out as a boy falls, scraping his knee. Blood wells bright against dusty skin. His friends crowd around, half concerned, half amused. His mother hurries over, scolding him for carelessness even as she scoops him into her arms. She spits on her fingers, rubs the wound, mutters a quick prayer to a protective household god. Within minutes, the boy wriggles free, limping but smiling, determined to rejoin the game. Childhood resilience, it seems, hasn't changed in thousands of years. As dusk deepens, chores intrude. Parents call children home to fetch water, gather firewood, or help grind grain. Some groan, some argue, some dash off cheerfully, play fragments dissolving into the rhythms of family life. Yet even as they work, you hear laughter. Girls carrying jars still race each other. Boys tasked with herding goats turn it into a competition of who can shout loudest. Play is elastic, stretching to fit around duty, never fully gone. A few stragglers linger in the square. They invent stories pointing at the first stars pricking the sky, claiming each is a god's eye watching them. They dare each other to jump higher, to touch the heavens. Their voices grow softer as darkness settles, but the sparkle of imagination shines as brightly as the constellations above. You pause, reflecting. These children will grow quickly. By adolescence, many will work the fields, weave cloth, serve in workshops, or begin apprenticeships. Some will marry young, their playtime exchanged for household burdens. Yet in this fleeting stage they carry the lightness of Egypt's soul. No pharaoh, no monument, no hymn could survive without laughter passed from child to child, generation to generation. A scholar once suggested that toys in tombs were symbolic, meant for the afterlife rather than evidence of childhood play. But holding that wooden top, feeling its burn marks, you can almost hear the giggles that spun it. Symbols or not, they tell the truth. Childhood was not all labour. Amid dust and heat, Egyptian children carved out worlds of fun. And as you walk away, their laughter lingers, echoing in the alleys long after the games fade. In the hush of nightfall it becomes clear. The future of Egypt didn't rest only in temples or fields. It was carried in small grubby hands tossing knucklebones, in bare feet pounding dirt, in voices daring to pretend, to sing, to laugh. Night has draped its cloak over the village, but inside the mud brick homes life continues with a steady pulse. Lamps flicker with weak flames, smoke curling towards soot-stained ceilings. The children you left playing in the dust now curl on mats, some already snoring softly, others whispering stories in the dark. But behind these quiet corners lies the weighty business of adulthood. Marriage, kinship, and the weaving of families that anchor Egyptian society as surely as the Nile anchors the fields. You step into a courtyard where a wedding feast once took place, and the echoes of that union still cling to the air. The Egyptians did not carve their marriages into monuments, like kings carved their victories, but in the weaving of daily lives, these unions mattered more than any battle. Marriage here is not the formalized ritual you might expect. There are no vows exchanged before priests, no temple ceremonies. Instead, it is simple, almost startlingly so. A man and a woman begin living together. Households acknowledge the union, and from that day they are considered married. Some texts describe contracts, outlining property rights and responsibilities, but often the recognition of community is enough. You imagine the moment. Two families gathered, a bride stepping into her husband's home for the first time, carrying linen or small trinkets as dowry. She smiles shyly, her coal-lined eyes lowered, her braided hair glistening with oil. Friends clap. Neighbours whisper gossip about whether she's lucky or not. Bread and beer flow, children swarm around tables, and musicians pluck lutes in celebration. Marriage is less a religious covenant than a social contract, but that doesn't lessen its gravity. Inside the home, family life sprawls messy and crowded. The husband is nominally head of household, yet Egyptian women hold surprising autonomy for the ancient world. They can own property, inherit wealth, bring lawsuits, and initiate divorce. In some records, wives are described as mistress of the house, not merely an accessory but an equal force. Still, equality doesn't erase expectations. Women cook, weave, raise children, and keep households running. Men plough, build, craft, and trade. But the boundaries blur, because survival rarely respects neat lines. You glance at one family gathered for supper, The mother ladles lentil stew into bowls, her eldest daughter helping with deft motions. The father mends a broken stool, grunting in satisfaction as the peg fits back into place. Their son sits nearby, spinning a toy, occasionally sneaking bites of bread before it reaches the table. The rhythm is familiar. Arguments, jokes, shared food. In this small room, you see the essence of continuity. And of course, where there is family, there is friction. One couple quarrels loudly next door, voices cutting through mud brick walls. He accuses her of wasting grain. She fires back that he spends too much at the beer stall. Their neighbours listen with a mix of amusement and sympathy. Privacy is a luxury mud brick cannot provide. Tomorrow, perhaps, they'll reconcile with laughter. Or perhaps not. Divorce exists, and while costly, it is accepted. A husband might send his wife away, or a wife might leave if mistreated. Contracts protect women's property, ensuring they are not left destitute. Historians still debate how common divorce was, but the very fact it existed speaks of a society less rigid than you might expect. Romance is not absent either. You recall love poems etched into ostraca, lines that murmur across centuries. One compares a beloved's voice to beer on a hot day. Another declares that the sight of her makes him sick with desire, unable to eat. These are not dry contracts, but tender whispers. Egyptians loved with the same hunger, same jealousy, same devotion that you recognize instantly. At night, couples might sit under stars, murmuring dreams, their hands entwined, while children snore nearby. A quirky tidbit surfaces. During certain festivals, young men and women could mingle more freely, singing and dancing, sometimes choosing partners in the festive chaos. Imagine the festival of Hathor, goddess of love and music, where drums thundered, wine flowed, and inhibitions loosened. Parents might pretend disapproval, but secretly hope their daughters would catch a husband in the revelry. It is a reminder that even in an ordered world, desire finds its own paths. Family life is woven with obligations to ancestors. Small shrines in homes bear names of the dead, offerings of bread or beer left for them. Children grow up with constant reminders that their existence continues a line stretching backward endlessly. You picture a grandmother telling stories of her parents to a child curled at her knee, ensuring memory doesn't fray. The dead are not absent. They sit invisibly at the table, silent but felt. Historians argue about whether families were strictly nuclear, parents and children, or extended with grandparents, cousins and aunts packed into one roof. Evidence leans both ways, depending on time and region. You look around and see both possibilities. One home buzzing with multiple generations, another small and self-contained. Perhaps the answer is fluid, shaped by wealth, space, and circumstance. Children are both joy and burden. You watch a mother cradle an infant, rocking him while stirring a pot with her free hand. His wails pierce the air until she hums softly, and he quiets, lulled by her rhythm. Beside her, older children chase each other, occasionally snagged by a father's stern hand to help with chores. Play and labour intertwine seamlessly, each child's hands learning tasks as soon as they can grip. Childhood is brief here. By adolescence, work swallows play. Still, laughter spills often. Parents tease children. Children mimic parents, siblings squabble and reconcile. You overhear a father tell a story about a foolish crocodile tricked by a clever fox. The children erupt in giggles demanding another tale. Storytelling is glue, binding lessons, humour and affection into memory. As you peer closer into the rhythms of marriage and family, you realise how much of it feels familiar. The arguments over money, the tenderness of lullabies, the laughter over dinner, they echo across time. And yet the differences are striking too. Bread baked with sand, dowries measured in jars of oil, gods invoked for fertility, children smeared with protective amulets. Night deepens and homes quiet. Couples lie side by side on mats, whispering until sleep takes them. Infants stir, mothers soothe, fathers snore. Somewhere another couple argues still, their voices sharp in the darkness. And somewhere else, two lovers sneak glances by the dim glow of a lamp, hearts racing. Marriage and family in Egypt were not carved into monuments, but they were the true foundation stones of the civilization. Without these unions, without the daily weaving of affection, duty and quarrel, no pharaoh could reign, no temple could stand, no field could feed. Life's grandeur is built on the ordinary, repeated endlessly behind mud brick walls. You leave the village edge, the echoes of family voices fading into the desert night. Above you, stars scatter like beads across the sky, the Milky Way stretching bright as a god's necklace, and you realise Egypt's endurance lies not just in stone pyramids, but in households where love, duty and laughter endured through every dawn and dusk. The glow of family hearths dims as the night wears on, but in one dimly lit room on the edge of the village life hangs in delicate balance. A child coughs, her thin chest rattling with each breath, and her mother sits beside her, fanning the air anxiously. This is where another side of Egyptian life unfolds, the world of healers, remedies, prayers and potions. Forget antiseptic white rooms and crisp lab coats. Medicine here is a blend of herbs, magic and hope, often more ritual than science, yet sometimes startlingly effective. You crouch at the threshold as a healer enters. He's no priest in gilded robes, but a wiry man carrying a small satchel of tools. His linen kilt is stained, his scalp bare, his fingers long and careful. He kneels beside the child, feeling her forehead, listening to her chest. He mutters softly, half diagnosis, half invocation. From his bag he pulls herbs, garlic, honey, juniper berries. Each has known properties, garlic to cleanse, honey to soothe, juniper for scent and possibly for lungs. He crushes them together with a stone pestle, the air filling with pungency. The paste glistens, thick and sticky. He mixes it with beer, pours a small sip between the girl's lips, and whispers words that sound more like spell than recipe. This is Egyptian medicine, part pharmacy, part incantation. Papyrus texts describe hundreds of such treatments, ointments, poultices, tinctures, yet alongside them, spells to ward off demons thought to cause disease. To heal was to battle both the physical and the invisible. You realise this healer doesn't separate the two. In his mind, garlic and divine words work hand in hand. Nearby, a woman waits with her husband, his leg swollen from a cut in the fields. Flies buzz around the wound, but the healer shoos them away, washing it with wine. The alcohol stings. The man curses loudly, earning a glare from his wife. The healer chuckles, smears honey over the cut, and binds it with linen. Honey, sticky and golden, is more than sweet. It fights infection, though Egyptians don't know the word. They simply know it works. A quirky tidbit you recall. Soldiers carried honey in their kits as medicine as much as food, a fact modern science would smile at approvingly. Historians still argue whether Egyptian doctors were primarily practical healers or ritual magicians. Records show both. Surgical instructions alongside prayers, prescriptions beside invocations to Sekhmet, goddess of plague. Perhaps they were both, shifting depending on need. For the coughing child, prayer may soothe more than garlic. For the infected leg, honey may save where words cannot. The healer doesn't worry about categories. He uses everything he knows, because failure means death. You wander to another corner where a young mother sits with her infant. The child wails inconsolably, her tiny fists clenching. The healer takes a small amulet of Bez, the dwarf god with lion's mane and fierce grin, and ties it around the baby's neck with a cord. He mutters a blessing, then smears a paste of dates on the baby's lips. The crying softens. The mother kisses the amulet gratefully, convinced Bess himself has intervened. Perhaps she is right. Faith can calm as much as medicine. The healer's satchel reveals stranger remedies too. A jar of crocodile dung, dried and powdered. A bundle of dried lizard skins. A small packet of natron salt, sharp and bitter. Some will be used for contraception, some for purges, some for charms. You shudder at the thought of swallowing half these concoctions, but here, desperation makes the line between cure and poison thin. A boy with stomach cramps gulps a bitter brew of castor oil, grimacing as he swallows. Moments later he rushes to the latrine. The healer smiles. Sometimes the cure is exactly what it looks like. You watch as a scribe enters the room, holding a papyrus scroll. He reads aloud a treatment for headaches. Grind willow bark, mix with water, apply to forehead. You recognise this. It's the ancestor of aspirin, discovered millennia before laboratories named it. The healer follows the instructions, spreading paste across a woman's temples. She sighs in relief. Knowledge survives because it works, even when wrapped in incantation. Yet for all these successes, much remains trial and error. You overhear one man complain that the last healer he visited prescribed fried mice to cure a cough. He swears it made things worse. Others nod sympathetically, though a few mutter that maybe the preparation was wrong. Even failures don't extinguish belief, because when death hovers, people will cling to anything that promises hope. The healer himself seems both confident and weary. His knowledge is vast, yet he knows his limits. He cannot cure everything. Some fevers linger until life fades. Some wounds fester despite honey. In those cases, he turns more firmly to prayer. He chants to Sekhmet to turn her fierce eye away, to Hathor for comfort, to Thoth for wisdom. His voice is low, melodic, carrying comfort even when his hands cannot. Sometimes the prayer is more balm than the ointment. A mother whispers to you as you watch. She once buried a child despite every remedy. Still, she returns to the healer when sickness comes. Faith is not broken by failure. It bends, reshapes, persists. In this fragile world, survival demands trust in both herbs and gods. Later, you follow the healer into his tiny workspace. Shelves carved into mud brick walls hold jars of herbs, powders, and oils. Bundles of dried plants hang from rafters, their scents mingling into a pungent haze. A papyrus scroll lies open on the table, its lines of hieroglyphs detailing remedies for bites, burns, fevers. You scan the list, marvelling at the blend of practical advice and wild invention. Treat burns with milk and honey. Sensible. To banish nightmares, place a fish head under the pillow. Less so. Still, you suspect the comfort of ritual soothes more than logic can measure. A quirky practice catches your eye. Priests of Sekhmet were sometimes considered the most skilled physicians, though their role was as much exorcist as doctor. If plague swept through, they might blame the goddess's wrath, prescribing rituals to appease her. Did it work? Hard to say. But the presence of ritual gave people a sense of agency in the face of chaos. As the night deepens, the healer visits his patients once more. The coughing child breathes more easily, her mother smiling with relief. The man's leg is bound tightly, the honey seeping into the wound. The baby sleeps with Bess guarding her chest. The healer gathers his tools, bows slightly to the families, and departs into the cool air. His work is not done, it never is. But for tonight, life is nudged back from the edge. You step outside, the stars sharp above, and feel the weight of what you've witnessed. Medicine here is messy, half wisdom, half superstition, yet carried by faith and persistence. Egyptians did not separate science from magic, body from soul. To heal meant to balance both, to call upon plants and gods alike. And as you walk back toward the sleeping village, you realize survival in Egypt was never guaranteed. But through honey, garlic, prayer, and hope, people grasped at life with both hands. And sometimes, against all odds, it was enough. Dawn returns, gilding the Nile in pale gold, and as you walk through the waking village, you realize you're never alone. Not because of the people, though they shuffle sleepily out of their doorways, but because of the creatures that seem to occupy every corner of Egyptian life. Cats dart between legs, dogs bark hoarsely, donkeys bray, geese hiss like furious old women. Egypt is no quiet kingdom of statues. It is alive with animals sacred and mundane, noisy and silent, useful and sometimes dangerous. The first to greet you is a cat, her coat striped and sleek, her eyes gleaming like polished bronze. She arches her back, stretches and rubs against your ankle with casual ownership. In Egypt, cats are not just pets. They're guardians. Their sharp claws keep grain stores safe from mice and rats. Their lithe bodies slip silently through alleys, their presence believed to embody the goddess Bastet. A farmer steps out of his home, places a small dish of milk for his cat, and bows slightly before heading to the fields. To strike a cat, let alone kill one, is unthinkable. In later times, the penalty could be death. Even now, whispers say that if you mistreat a cat, Bastet herself may stalk you in dreams. Nearby, dogs stretch and yawn, tails thumping in dust. They are less sacred than cats, but no less important. Lean, long-snouted and sharp-eyed, they guard homes, chase thieves, and sometimes accompany hunts into the marshes. Children play with pups, tugging ears and laughing, while older dogs curl at thresholds, watching strangers with suspicious eyes. One dog follows you as you walk, tail wagging, then suddenly barks ferociously at a goose that has wandered too close. The goose hisses back, wings flapping, and for a moment chaos reigns until the goose struts away indignantly, victorious in its arrogance. Geese, in fact, are everywhere. They wander freely through courtyards, honking loudly, leaving messy trails behind them. Their eggs are food, their feathers used for cushions, their bodies roasted on festival days. Yet their tempers are notorious. Many Egyptians joke that a goose guard's better than a dog. You watch one chase a boy through the square, wings spread wide, the boy shrieking in terror as adults laugh. Sacred or not, geese have no patience for children. Donkeys groan as farmers lead them toward the fields, baskets of grain strapped across their backs. Patient yet stubborn, they are the backbone of transport. Without donkeys, water jars would never reach homes, grain would never reach markets, and trade would stumble. Yet they are not always compliant. A man swats his donkey with a reed, and the beast digs in its heels, refusing to move. The man curses, neighbours shout suggestions, but the donkey simply stares blankly, chewing. Eventually the man gives up, bribing it with a bundle of clover. The donkey ambles forward smugly. Lesson delivered. In the marshes near the Nile, larger beasts roam. You catch sight of a hippo wallowing in shallow water, its eyes just above the surface. Children shout warnings, dragging each other back from the bank. Hippos are sacred to some deities, yet feared for their ferocity. They can overturn boats, crush men, destroy crops. Hunters sometimes spear them, not only for safety but for prestige. To slay a hippo is a feat sung about in songs. Still, as you watch its massive shape glide through water, you sense why Egyptians painted them on tomb walls, symbols of chaos, of power, of the untamed Nile itself. Crocodiles lurk too, silent and sinister. The god Sobek wears their head, embodying both fertility and ferocity. In some regions, crocodiles are worshipped, even mummified after death. But to fishermen, they are nightmares. You hear a man mutter as he hauls his net, eyes darting nervously to the water. Stories abound of crocodiles dragging men from banks, their jaws snapping shut like divine judgment. And yet offerings are made to Sobek, temples built, prayers whispered. Fear and reverence coexist. Cattle graze in the meadows, their horns gleaming, their hides swishing with flies. They provide milk, hides, and meat on rare occasions. Bulls especially are symbols of strength and fertility. You overhear farmers boasting of their herds as though bragging about family honour. In temples, the Apis bull is revered, its markings sacred, its body embalmed at death. To own cattle is wealth, to lose them is disaster. A farmer strokes his cow's flank as he leads her to water, affection plain in his rough hand. Sheep and goats bleat endlessly, their cries carrying across fields. They give wool, milk, skins, and occasionally meat. Children herd them with sticks, shouting and laughing, though the animals often seem to herd the children instead. You chuckle watching a goat snatch a piece of cloth from a washing line, trotting away proudly as women chase, cursing. Goats, it seems, are eternal tricksters, unchanged across millennia. Birds crowd the skies, ibises, herons, falcons. An ibis struts along the bank sacred to Thoth, god of wisdom. To kill one is unthinkable, yet farmers mutter angrily when flocks raid their fields. Falcons soar high, sharp-eyed hunters, embodiments of Horus. Some are tamed, trained for hunting. You watch one swoop, snatch a fish from shallow water and rise again, wings flashing in the sun. The boy beside you gasps in admiration, vowing to one day own such a bird. Even monkeys appear occasionally, imported from distant lands kept as pets by the wealthy. One scampers along a roof, snatching fruit from a basket, chattering gleefully as the owner shouts in frustration. Monkeys delight and annoy in equal measure, exotic enough to draw stares, mischievous enough to cause endless trouble. A quirky tidbit whispers through your thoughts. Some wealthy Egyptians even kept baboons, dressing them in jewellery, teaching them tricks. Imagine a banquet with a baboon clapping along to music, half guest, half spectacle. Insects too are constant companions. Flies swarm over every meal, buzzing relentlessly. People wave palm fronds, burn incense, smear oils. But still they come. Scarab beetles roll dung balls tirelessly, their persistence so admired they become symbols of rebirth, carved into amulets. To Egyptians, even beetles hold cosmic meaning, pushing the sun across the sky like their dung across the sand. You spot one now, legs straining against its heavy sphere, and you marvel at the symbolism hidden in such a humble creature. Historians debate whether animals were loved as companions or revered mainly as symbols. Evidence shows both. Tombs contain mummified cats curled tenderly beside their owners, yet also jars of mummified ibises stacked by the thousands as offerings. Affection and reverence blend, sometimes indistinguishably. Perhaps Egyptians saw no division. An animal could be both pet and God's vessel, both tool and family. As the day warms, animals dominate the soundscape. Dogs bark, geese honk, donkeys bray, cattle low, goats bleat, birds cry overhead. It is a cacophony, yet somehow it feels like the pulse of life itself. You close your eyes and listen, realizing that silence in Egypt is rare. The land is alive, teeming with voices not human yet essential. Children chase cats, farmers curse donkeys, women scatter grain for geese, fishermen eye crocodiles warily. Life here is a tangle of species, each woven into survival. Egyptians do not live apart from animals. They live among them, beside them, often at their mercy. Every loaf, every jar, every garment depends on creatures great and small. As evening falls, cats curl near fires, dogs settle at thresholds, cattle rest in pens. The hippo yawns in its marsh, crocodiles drift like logs, birds roost in palm trees. The village hum quiets, but the animal chorus never ceases entirely. In dreams, perhaps, Egyptians still hear it. The bleat, the bray, the hiss, the roar. Reminders that their world is shared, not theirs alone. And as you lie back under the stars, you realize Egypt's strength was never human alone. It was built on paws, hooves, wings, scales, and claws. All voices in the endless song of survival along the Nile. The work of fields and workshops, the weight of marriage, the demands of gods. Egyptian life seems relentless. But as twilight drapes its violet cloak over the Nile, something shifts. A different rhythm rises, one that belongs not to ploughs or ink, but to music, laughter, and play. This is the Egypt that comes alive after toil, the Egypt of song, of dancing feet, of games and amusements that stitch joy into the weary fabric of survival. You first hear it drifting from a courtyard, the twang of a lute, the soft rattle of a sistrum, a woman's voice lilting in melody. You follow the sound, slipping into the glow of oil lamps. Families gather on mats, bowls of beer passing from hand to hand. A man plucks at a lute fashioned from wood and animal sinew, his fingers nimble despite calluses from the day's work. A woman shakes a sistrum, its metal rods jingling like rain. Together, they weave a tune that rises over the low murmur of conversation. Children clap along, eyes bright. Music is everywhere here. At work, it sets the pace. In temples, it lifts prayers. In homes, it sweetens the night. Flutes carved from reeds, harps strung with gut, clappers struck in rhythm all fill the air. Egyptians believe music has divine roots. Hathor, goddess of love and joy, is said to cradle the sistrum as her own. When music swells, people feel her presence gentle and intoxicating. But music alone is never enough. Soon the courtyard erupts in dance. Women sway gracefully, their linen dresses catching the lamplight, hips rolling, hands swirling overhead. Men clap and cheer, some joining with less grace but more enthusiasm. One boy leaps into the circle, cartwheeling clumsily, collapsing in laughter. His antics send waves of giggles across the crowd. Dance is not reserved for the elite. It belongs to everyone, from nobles who hire troops of trained performers to farmers who stamp their feet in dust. And laughter flows with beer. Jars are uncorked, frothy liquid ladled into bowls. Beer is daily fuel, but in the evening it becomes indulgence. Friends drink deep, voices grow louder, jokes bawdier. Someone hiccups mid-song and the crowd roars with laughter. A man slaps his friend's back, declaring him champion of hiccups. Another tries to outdo him, puffing his cheeks until he collapses, wheezing with mirth. Egyptians knew intoxication well and embraced it, seeing drunkenness as a gift of Hathor too. The boundary between sacred and rowdy is thinner than a reed stem. Games spread across mats, knuckle bones tossed high and caught with nimble fingers. Men gamble, shouting over each roll, slamming down wagers of bread or onions. A woman scolds them, claiming they waste food, but moments later she joins in, her eyes alight with competition. Another group plays Senet, Egypt's most beloved board game. Carved boards with squares, pieces sliding in tense silence, the outcome believed to mirror fate itself. To win is not just victory, it is proof that fortune smiles upon you. Even tomb walls show nobles playing Senet, as though gaming continues beyond death. You crouch beside one board, watching the pieces glide. A man mutters a prayer as he moves, hoping the gods of chance favour him. His opponent smirks, counters swiftly, and the crowd groans. Excitement crackles in the air, not unlike the tension around a modern card table. Leisure here is not passive, it is charged, communal, loud. Performers sometimes wander through. Tonight a juggler arrives, tossing clay balls high into the dark. Children squeal, chasing the arcs of motion, while adults clap. He adds knives, their copper blades flashing in lamplight. Gasps ripple. But he grins, catching each blade with flourish. The audience erupts, coins clinking into his hand. Behind him, a storyteller begins weaving a tale of gods and monsters, his voice rising and falling like the river's tide. Faces lean closer, eyes reflecting firelight. His words carry them far beyond the village, into myth, into eternity. Leisure is not only entertainment, it's also competition. Two men step forward with sticks, each gripping their staff tightly. The crowd forms a circle. They salute each other, then clash. Wood smacks wood, the rhythm sharp, echoing like drum beats. Sweat glistens as they jab, block, swing. One lands a strike against his opponent's shoulder, and the crowd cheers. Stick fighting is more than sport, it's training for war, but here it is also theatre. The victor raises his stick high, grinning, then pulls his opponent into a hug. The crowd claps approval. Historians still puzzle over whether leisure was viewed as essential release or dangerous indulgence. Some texts praise music and play as gifts of Hathor, while others warn of laziness and distraction. Perhaps both views coexisted. Joy was necessary, but too much could unravel order. Egyptians sought balance even in fun, as they did in all things. A quirky detail you overhear. Some villagers believe hiccuping during a song pleases Hathor, as if she laughs with you. Others argue it's bad luck, a sign you've displeased the goddess. The debate becomes heated, with each side insisting their grandmothers swore differently. The argument dissolves into more laughter, when one of the debaters hiccups loudly mid-sentence. You realise superstition slips even into joy, shaping how people interpret the smallest mishap. As the night deepens, the square hums with warmth. Couples sway to music. Children nod off on mats. Gamblers still shout over their boards. Beer jars empty, and someone staggers to fetch more. Lamps flicker low, smoke curling into star-pierced sky. The Nile murmurs nearby, reflecting moonlight like scattered silver. In this space, life is not toil or prayer. It is simple, shared delight. Egyptians did not divide sharply between sacred and profane. Leisure could be prayer, and prayer could be play. When dancers twirl, they echo the joy of Hathor. When gamblers toss knucklebones, they invoke fate's mysteries. When storytellers recite myths, they educate as much as entertain. Eventually exhaustion seeps in. Instruments quiet. Voices fade. Children are carried home asleep. The square empties, leaving only embers glowing faintly. Tomorrow will bring ploughs, scribes, priests and markets again. But tonight's laughter lingers, stitched into memory, a reminder that joy is as essential as bread. As you step away, the faint strains of music still brush the air, mingling with the rush of the river. You realise Egypt's endurance is not only in monuments or rituals, but in nights like these, when families, neighbours and strangers forget burdens for a few hours, and the world becomes light with laughter. Morning cracks open once again, the village stirring from its slumber, but not all awaken with laughter or anticipation of bread and beer. Some rise with dread, glancing nervously toward the square where officials gather. The Nile gives life, yes, but it also tempts greed, jealousy, and anger. For all the talk of cosmic balance, Ma'at, that sacred order, humans here stumble just as they do anywhere, and when they stumble too far, crime stains the dust, and punishment follows with a heavy hand. You wander through an alley where whispers travel quicker than the flies. A woman mutters that her neighbour stole a goose during last night's revelry. Another insists that the brewer down the lane waters his beer, cheating customers. A boy brags he saw a thief caught sneaking grain from a storage bin. Markets and temples may sing of abundance, but scarcity gnaws at the edges, breeding envy and theft. The Egyptians knew this well. After all, why else would they carve warnings on tomb walls threatening violators with divine retribution? At the heart of such matters stands the village headman, backed by scribes who record every accusation. You watch as a farmer approaches, dragging a young man by the wrist. The boy's face is pale, eyes darting, a half-eaten loaf clutched in his hand. "He stole from my storehouse," the farmer shouts, waving toward the loaf as proof. A crowd gathers instantly. Egyptians love drama as much as bread. The headman frowns, gestures for the boy to speak. The boy stammers. He was hungry, his family short on grain. The crowd murmurs, some sympathetic, others indignant. Historians still debate whether justice here leaned toward fairness or intimidation. Records show both. Legal contracts that protect widows, and harsh punishments for thieves. What you see now feels improvisational, justice shaped as much by the headman's mood as by law. After a tense pause, the boy is ordered to return double the stolen loaf in compensation. His family will scramble to pay, but his life is spared. The farmer scowls, the boy bows, and the crowd disperses, already gossiping about the outcome. Not all cases end so gently. You drift toward the temple courtyard where more serious trials occur. Here, under painted walls, officials gather to judge crimes too weighty for village heads. Murder, temple theft, treason, offences against the gods or the crown. A group of accused stands trembling before the scribes, their hands bound with rope. One man glares defiantly, another weeps openly, a woman stares blankly as though already resigned. Priests chant softly in the background, invoking the gods' presence and judgment. Punishments vary and some are brutal. Lesser crimes might mean lashes across the back, the whip biting until blood flows. Others earn exile, the accused cast into the desert, survival uncertain. Hands might be cut off for repeated theft, a mark of shame and deterrence. In extreme cases, treason, sacrilege, death waits, swift and merciless. The method shifts, strangulation, drowning, sometimes impalement. You shiver, the heat suddenly feeling cold against your skin. Yet punishment was not only physical. Shame itself carried weight. Offenders paraded through streets, mocked, scorned, their families marked by dishonour. In a culture where reputation meant survival, public disgrace cut deeper than wounds. Children might suffer for their parents' crimes, neighbours distance themselves, opportunities vanish. To live under the shadow of shame could feel worse than death. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. Some villagers whisper about truth ordeals. In certain disputes, the accused might be forced to swear innocence before a statue of a god, touching sacred symbols while proclaiming purity. If they trembled, stumbled, or sweated too much, guilt was assumed. Was it divine judgment or clever psychology? Hard to say, but fear of the gods weighed heavily enough that few lied boldly. You recall also that the vizier, the pharaoh's right hand, was ultimate arbiter of justice. In grand halls he sat beneath painted ceilings, hearing cases of corruption, theft and rebellion. Scribes lined the walls, recording every word. Ordinary villagers might never glimpse such trials, but their ripples reached even here. Rumours of corrupt officials punished or bribes exposed became legends, teaching both fear and hope. Corruption, though, was persistent. Officials skimmed grain taxes, priests pocketed offerings, guards took bribes. People complained quietly, muttering that those with power bent law to their favour. Historians still argue whether Egypt was exceptionally just compared to other ancient states, or whether it only looked orderly because scribes celebrated victories, not failures. Walking these alleys, you sense both truths. Order was aspiration, but disorder lingered always in the shadows. Children, too, mimic the drama. You smile as you see them play a game of judge one child, seated proudly on a stone, declares herself vizier. Another, accused of stealing a pebble, pleads innocence. The judge frowns gravely, then sentences him to run laps around the square while others laugh. Their play reflects the seriousness they witness daily. Justice here is not abstract, but a performance everyone learns to navigate. As the day wears on, another case unfolds, this one darker. A man accused of conspiring against his master is dragged into the square. His neighbours whisper that he spoke carelessly, cursing the pharaoh after too much beer. Words can be as dangerous as blades here. He's bound, whipped until he collapses, then dragged to labour gangs repairing canals. Survival will be hard. His punishment is as much exile as servitude. The crowd murmurs, half relieved it wasn't them, half horrified at how swiftly life can collapse. At night, stories circulate of thieves who break into tombs, prying gold and amulets from mummies. The tales shock and fascinate. Tomb robbery is both crime and blasphemy, a strike against eternity itself. Punishment for such acts is severe, sometimes execution, sometimes mutilation, always disgrace. Yet the stories persist, perhaps because greed is eternal, and gold's lure outshines fear. You think back to the constant emphasis on ma'at, the principle of order, justice, balance. Egypt prided itself on embodying it, yet what you see is fragile human justice, sometimes fair, sometimes cruel, sometimes swayed by coin or connection. Perhaps that is the point. Ma'at was not a state achieved, but a goal chased daily, imperfectly, endlessly. A quirky scene interrupts your heavy thoughts. 2 boys are caught stealing figs from a stall. Instead of punishment, the vendor chases them with exaggerated outrage, waving his arms while laughing. The boys squeal, darting away, figs clutched tight. The crowd chuckles, some tossing coins to the vendor in sympathy. Not every theft is tragedy. Sometimes it is comedy, part of the messy dance of daily life. As evening falls, the day's trials echo in whispers. Some say the punishments were just. Others mutter that officials favoured friends. Families comfort the disgraced, neighbours gossip, scribes record. The square empties, but the weight of justice lingers, heavy as incense smoke. Tomorrow, new accusations will rise, new disputes demand judgment. You walk away under the stars, reflecting that Egypt's greatness was not just stone and ritual, but also the fragile attempt to tame human weakness. Crime is eternal, punishment inevitable, and justice always uncertain. Yet the effort, the striving toward order, however imperfect, was the true backbone of civilization. And as you drift into the night, the echoes of shouts, weeping, and scribes' pens blend with the Nile's quiet rush. Here, justice is not blind. It is human, flawed, and endlessly performed beneath the watchful eyes of gods and neighbours alike. The next dawn greets you not with children's laughter or the shuffle of farmers, but with the clang of bronze against wood. Down a wide, packed dirt road at the edge of the settlement, men gather in formation, spears gleaming in the light. The air carries the raw smell of sweat, leather, and dust churned by marching feet. Egypt is a land defined by the Nile's bounty, but its edges are never quiet. Bandits prowl deserts. Raiders test borders. Nubian archers threaten from the south, and Libyan tribes press from the west. To live here is to rely on soldiers who guard those fragile thresholds, between safety and chaos. You stand among them now. The recruits are young, ribs visible under linen kilts, yet they carry themselves with a bravado born from necessity. Each grips a spear tipped with bronze, a shield made of wood covered in hide. Their sandals crunch against gravel as they march, drilled into rhythm by a scarred veteran barking orders. His voice rasps like stone dragged on stone, but his words bite through the morning haze. Some men wear leather caps, others carry bows strung with sinew. A few heft axes, their blades broad, meant not only for war but for hacking wood or doors. One soldier adjusts the strap of his shield, muttering about blisters. Another hums softly under his breath, a tune almost drowned by clatter. For all their swagger, nervousness flickers at the edges. These men are farmers' sons, potters' nephews, scribes' brothers, pulled from their homes to march into deserts where shade is scarce and water scarcer. Their training is plain but relentless. You watch them practice thrusting in unison, shields overlapping into a wall. The thuds echo, dust rising, sweat dripping. Then they scatter into pairs, sparring with wooden weapons. One man lunges, another sidesteps, laughter breaking through when someone stumbles. The veteran doesn't smile. He cracks his reed stick across the ground, reminding them that mistakes in drill mean death in battle. They sober instantly, resuming strikes with grim focus. Historians still debate whether Egypt maintained a permanent standing army or raised troops as needed. Evidence leans both ways. Professional soldiers in garrisons near borders, but farmers conscripted in times of war. Looking at these men, you see the mix clearly, some hardened, their scars obvious, others raw, hands more suited to sickles than spears. Together they form the patchwork defence of the Nile Kingdom. Beyond training lies the march. You join them as they tramp along dusty paths, leaving fields behind. Packs bounce against their backs, holding dried bread, salted fish, water skins. Donkeys plod alongside, laden with extra supplies. The sun climbs higher, and already tongues loll dry. A soldier mutters a prayer to a moon for strength, while another curses the heat. Their captain ignores both, eyes fixed ahead. To him, complaints are wasted, breath better saved for battle. Hours later, you reach the edge of settled land. The green belt of fields shrinks into scrub, then into sand stretching endlessly. Here lies Egypt's vulnerability, the transition from fertile life to barren death. The soldiers spread out, scanning the horizon for movement. Raiders from the desert often strike suddenly, their camels swift, their arrows deadly. Every shadow could be threat, every shimmer of heat a mirage hiding danger. One soldier points, and all squint into distance. A caravan approaches, donkeys laden with jars, drivers trudging alongside. The captain halts his men, orders formation. The caravan draws closer, and tension hangs like a drawn bow. The merchant raises his hands, calling out greetings. Relief ripples through ranks, traders, not raiders. Still the soldiers escort them part of the way, ensuring no ambush waits. Egypt survives on trade, but trade invites risk, and soldiers are its uneasy guardians. At night, the camp sprawls across a ridge. Fires flicker, bread bakes on stones, songs rise. Men laugh, tell stories of home, boast of imagined victories. One swears he once killed a crocodile barehanded. His comrades jeer, demanding proof. Another carves a figure into wood, a child's toy he'll carry back for his daughter. Amid camaraderie, shadows linger. Guards pace the perimeter, eyes sharp, spears ready. Beyond the firelight, the desert stretches infinite, its silence broken only by jackals howling. A quirky tidbit surfaces from their chatter. Some soldiers carry small charms, tiny figurines of Taweret or Bez, tucked into belts or tied to spears. They believe these protect them in battle, warding off arrows and curses. You spot one man kissing his amulet before lying down, whispering a promise to return home alive. Superstition blends with discipline, neither mocked, both essential. Occasionally, patrols clash with enemies. You imagine it now, Nubian archers loosing volleys from afar, their bows stronger, their accuracy feared. Egyptian shields rise, a wall rattling under impact. Then comes the countercharge, spears bristling, voices roaring. Dust blinds, metal clangs, men shout, stumble, fall. Victories are costly, defeats devastating. Yet even when peace reigns, training for this chaos never stops. Historians argue endlessly whether Egypt's expansion into Nubia was conquest for gold or defence against raids. Both motives glint like blades in the sun. Soldiers stationed at forts on the Nile's southern stretch lived isolated lives, staring southward, always waiting. Reliefs carved in temples show them triumphing, enemies bound and kneeling, but those walls emit the exhaustion, the loneliness, the endless watch under unrelenting heat. Closer to the Mediterranean, garrisons guard trade routes to the Levant. Soldiers march for months, through deserts, across foreign lands, returning with stories of strange cities, exotic goods, and battles fought under alien skies. Back home, they swagger into villages, their scars proof of distant adventures. Children gape, women whisper, men listen with both envy and relief that it wasn't them. Not all service is glory. Some soldiers are tasked with guarding granaries, tax caravans, or even prisons. These duties bring little honour but much temptation. Stories spread of guards skimming grain, pocketing bribes, turning blind eyes to smugglers. When caught, punishment is severe, but corruption clings like dust. It is always there, hard to scrub away. One evening, you sit among them, sharing bread and beer. They speak of families, wives weaving linen, children chasing goats, parents aging back in the village. They long for home, yet many confess that soldiering is better than starving. Service offers rations, pay, sometimes even land grants. For the poorest, the army is both lifeline and curse. They endure heat, wounds, fear, but they endure. As dawn breaks, the soldiers rise, stamping feet, adjusting straps, lifting spears. The desert wind whips their linen kilts, carrying grit into eyes and mouths. Yet they march forward, voices low but steady, singing a cadence that blends prayer with determination. You follow briefly, watching their figures shrink against the endless horizon until they vanish into heat shimmer. Back in the village, mothers and wives glance often toward that horizon, waiting. Some men will return, scarred but alive. Others will not, their names carved into temple records or lost entirely. Life along the Nile depends on them, yet rarely celebrates them. They are not pharaohs, not scribes, not priests. But without their vigilance, Egypt's borders would crumble, trade would falter, raiders would feast. As you sit on the riverbank that evening, you hear the distant echo of drums, maybe real, maybe memory. The Nile flows on, indifferent to battles fought on its edges. But you know now, Egypt's survival rested not only on floods and fields, but also on tired men gripping spears, pacing borders, whispering prayers into desert winds. The Nile gleams silver under the setting sun, and a hush falls over the village not born of leisure but of loss. A cry breaks through the air, raw, guttural, unmistakable. Someone has died. In Egypt, where life clings fiercely to the river's edge, death is no stranger. Yet it is not merely an ending here. It is a threshold, a passage, an ordeal of rituals meant to carry the soul safely into eternity. And you, standing at the edge of this mournful scene, are about to witness how the Egyptians prepared for the most certain of all certainties. Inside the home, women wail, their cries rising and falling like waves. Some tear at their hair, others beat their chests, dust smeared across their faces in grief. Neighbours press into the doorway, murmuring condolences, their voices low. At the centre lies the body, wrapped hastily for now in simple cloth, its face already shadowed by the stillness that never stirs again. Children watch wide-eyed, clinging to their mother's skirts, as if staring too long might invite death closer. The family summons embalmers, specialists trained for this most sacred craft. They arrive with tools wrapped in linen, their demeanour professional, almost detached. Death may shock families, but to embalmers it is familiar labour. They bow briefly, then set to work, for time presses. The Egyptian climate hastens decay, and preparations must begin swiftly. The body is carried to a small secluded chamber, where incense smoulders to mask the smell. Stripped of its wrappings, it is laid on a stone slab. The embalmers chant softly, invoking Anubis, jackal-headed guardian of the dead. Their hands are steady, almost ritualistic. They remove organs with bronze hooks, each placed into canopic jars guarded by protective deities. The lungs, the liver, the stomach, the intestines, all saved. The heart, believed to be the seat of thought and morality, is left in place, for it must be weighed in the afterlife. The brain curiously is scooped out and discarded, seen as little more than useless filler. You suppress a shudder at the matter-of-fact efficiency. The body is then packed with natron, a sharp, salty mineral gathered from dry lake beds. It dries flesh, leaching away moisture. For 40 days the corpse will rest in its salty bed, shrinking, hardening, preserved. You can almost smell the sting of natron in the air, sharp as desert wind. Families wait during this time, mourning, praying, preparing offerings. The house grows quieter, but grief lingers heavy. While the body rests, artisans craft the coffin. Carpenters shape planks of wood, often sycamore or imported cedar. Painters daub bright colours, gold for the divine, blue for the heavens, green for rebirth. Hieroglyphs bloom across the surface. Spells from the Book of the Dead, invocations to gods, the name of the deceased written boldly so memory never fades. To erase a name is to kill a soul twice. To write it is to secure eternity. Historians still debate whether elaborate mummification was common or reserved for the wealthy. Evidence suggests a spectrum, from simple shrouds in sand to gilded coffins in tombs. What you see now, with canopic jars and painted coffins, belongs to a family with means, though not noble. Most villagers would not afford this, but they would still honour the dead with rites, believing even modest offerings reach the gods. A quirky tidbit whispers into your mind. Some embalmers used onions as offerings tucked into wrappings, believing their strong scent warded off evil. Archaeologists have found mummies with onions still nestled in their sockets. You imagine the gods wrinkling their noses at the pungency, and you smile despite the solemnity. As the days pass, mourners gather nightly. Women sing laments, their voices high and piercing, believed to summon God's attention. Men sit silent, drinking beer, remembering the deceased's words and deeds. Stories flow, some reverent, some humorous. Death invites memory, and memory is mosaic, part praise, part jest. A man recalls how the departed once slipped into a canal drunk, only to emerge insisting he had wrestled a crocodile. Laughter ripples through tears. Egyptians, like all people, honour the dead not only with reverence but with the warmth of shared tales. Finally the day arrives. The body, now dried and preserved, is washed in perfumed water, wrapped carefully in layers of linen. Each bandage is tied with amulets, scarabs for rebirth, eyes of Horus for protection, ankhs for life eternal. Priests chant over each layer, invoking spells. The air fills with resin, myrrh, and incense, heavy and cloying. The final wrappings are painted with resin to seal them. The mummy lies complete, more sculpture than flesh, yet still profoundly human. The funeral procession begins. Family members wail, tearing their garments. Men carry the coffin on wooden poles, swaying under the weight. Priests lead, burning incense, chanting hymns. Women trail behind, their cries keening. The entire village joins, for death is communal. You walk among them, feeling the solemn weight pressing everyone into step. They cross the Nile, ferried by boat, for tombs are dug into the desert's west bank, the land of the setting sun where souls journey into night. The river glimmers under the load of coffin and mourners, reeds whispering at its edges. The crossing is symbolic, life to death, east to west, dawn to dusk. Even the water seems to hush, as if recognizing the gravity. At the tomb, cut into rock or dug into sand, priests perform the opening of the mouth ritual. A tool touches the mummy's lips and eyes, symbolically restoring senses for the afterlife. Without it, the soul could not eat, drink, or see in eternity. A priest chants, his voice low, resonant. The family bows, pressing foreheads to earth. Bread, beer, onions, and meat are laid beside the coffin, provisions for the journey. Jars of water glint in lamplight. Some families add Shabti figurines, tiny servants carved of faience, meant to labour for the deceased in the afterlife so they may rest. The coffin is lowered, prayers whispered, tears shed. The tomb is sealed, stone rolled across its mouth. Dust fills the air, glowing in torchlight, then silence. The dead joins eternity, and the living return to fields and markets, carrying grief like a shadow. Historians debate how much the common villager truly believed in elaborate afterlife journeys, the weighing of the heart, the fields of reeds, the devouring beast Amit. Was it literal faith or cultural tradition? Perhaps, like many beliefs, it varied. Some clung fiercely to visions of paradise, others performed rituals because to neglect them felt dangerous. What is clear is that ritual gave structure to grief, hope to despair, meaning to death. On the walk home, villagers murmur about the deceased's virtues. Was he honest, generous, lazy, harsh? Memory is trial and judgment, softer, but no less important than official courts. To be remembered well is a second life. To be forgotten is the truest death. That night, as lamps flicker low, families leave offerings at household shrines. Bread, beer, flowers, perhaps a few drops of milk. They whisper prayers, not grand hymns, but quiet words. Watch over us, protect our harvest, keep sickness away. The dead are never truly gone. They linger in courtyards, in fields, in dreams. A final, quirky belief surfaces. Some Egyptians placed letters to the dead in tombs, asking for help in disputes or blessings for crops. Imagine writing to your grandmother not just in memory, but in expectation of reply. To them, death did not sever bonds, it bent them into new shapes. As you return to your mat that night, the echoes of a lament still ring in your ears, mingling with the smell of incense. Death here is not hushed or hidden. It is loud, communal, wrapped in salt and linen, honoured with chants and tears, and beneath the sorrow lies endurance. Life ends. but with care, memory and ritual, it transforms into something eternal. You close your eyes, picturing the mummy resting in its tomb, amulets pressed against its heart, spells etched around it like a cocoon. Outside, the Nile whispers on, eternal as well. Life and death here are not opposites, but companions, each shaping the other in the endless rhythm of Egypt. The air feels lighter as the grief of burial recedes into memory. Egyptians, after all, know that mourning is only one half of the circle. The other half belongs to celebration, festivals where life surges forward, where gods and humans mingle in laughter, food and music. You awake to the sound of drums, steady as a heartbeat, echoing across the fields. A festival is beginning, and the entire village, weary from toil and sorrow, is swept into its current. Banners ripple in the morning breeze, bright against the mud brick backdrop. Women bustle through alleys, balancing trays of bread and baskets of onions. Men lug jars of beer, sloshing froth as they shout greetings. Children dart everywhere, their eyes wide with excitement, their bare feet slapping the earth. The village square, usually crowded with markets or disputes, has been transformed. A canopy of palm fronds shades the space, garlands of flowers hang from poles, and incense curls lazily skyward, sweet and heady. At the centre stands a statue of Hathor, goddess of joy and music, her face serene yet smiling. She's adorned with fresh flowers, her golden disc gleaming. Priests lead a procession, swinging censers, chanting hymns. Behind them, musicians beat drums and pluck lutes, their rhythms quickening with every step. The crowd cheers, some bowing, others clapping, others joining the song. Already the line between worship and revelry blurs. You watch as offerings pile at Hathor's feet, bread, figs, fish, jars of beer. Families murmur prayers asking for fertility, good harvests, protection from illness. Then, almost seamlessly, reverence slips into festivity. Musicians raise their tempo, dancers leap into the square, and the crowd erupts in applause. Priests smile knowingly. Hathor is not a goddess of austerity, but of delight. To honour her is to celebrate. Soon the square throbs with sound. Women sway gracefully, bracelets jingling, linen dresses swirling. Men clap in rhythm, some joining the dance with less grace but equal joy. Children imitate the movements, collapsing in laughter. Beer flows freely, carried in large jars, ladled into cups. Foam dribbles down chins as villagers gulp, their cheeks flushing. Someone sings loudly off-key, and instead of annoyance, laughter ripples outward. In this moment, every sound, every stumble, every note is sacred. Festivals are not just about joy, they are release valves. Weeks of grinding labour, months of strict rituals, years of unchanging cycles are loosened. Here, for a day or two, boundaries soften. Men flirt openly, women tease loudly, children run wild. Even the poorest eat their fill, even the most burdened laugh until their stomachs ache. Egypt survives not only on bread but on days like this, when survival is painted in colours of joy. Historians still debate how much of these festivals were state-sponsored displays of order, and how much were grassroots eruptions of joy. Reliefs show grand processions with pharaohs and priests, while papyri describe villagers drinking themselves into oblivion. Perhaps both existed, ritual on the temple steps, revelry in the streets. You stand in the latter, swept into dust and laughter, feeling balance restored after grief. A quirky tidbit emerges as you notice a group of women shaking sistra, rattles sacred to Hathor. They believe the sound drives away evil, ensuring happiness takes root. Children mimic them with improvised rattles made from reeds stuffed with pebbles. The clatter is deafening, but joyfully so. You imagine gods listening, amused by the chaotic chorus. Food abounds, tables groan under roasted geese, grilled fish, bread loaves steaming from ovens, bowls of lentils, piles of figs and dates sticky with sweetness. Families share openly, neighbours passing plates. A man offers you a slice of goose, its skin crisp, fat dripping. You bite, the flavour smoky and rich, juices burning your tongue. Beer washes it down, sour and refreshing. Hunger dissolves into gluttony, but who cares? Tomorrow will bring fields again. Tonight belongs to indulgence. Games fill the gaps between feasting. Men play senet, their moves dramatic, bets high. Children wrestle, cheered by adults. A group of youths races through the square, weaving between dancers, the crowd clapping them on. Musicians improvise, blending songs into laughter, laughter into chants. The square hums with energy, every corner alive. As the sun sets, torches flare, their flames painting faces gold. Shadows dance along walls, turning the square into a flickering dream. The music grows louder, the dancing wilder. Beer flows faster, inhibitions loosen further. A man climbs a pole, balancing precariously before tumbling into the crowd, who catch him with roars of laughter. Women toss flowers, men beat drums until their hands blister. Children spin in dizzy circles until they collapse giggling. The priests reappear, their voices rising above the chaos. They chant blessings, thanking Hathor for joy, asking her to carry the laughter into the coming year. The crowd hushes briefly, then erupts again, shouting her name, raising cups in toast. The goddess is everywhere, in the beat of drums, in the sway of hips, in the taste of figs, in the haze of beer. To live is to celebrate her. As the night deepens, some collapse where they sit, snoring. Others stagger home, singing loudly. Lovers slip into shadows, hands clasped, hearts quickened. Old men chuckle at youthful foolishness, remembering their own. The square grows quieter, but never silent. Somewhere, a drum still beats, faint but steady, like the pulse of joy itself. Historians argue whether such excess threatened order or reinforced it. Perhaps both are true. By allowing release, festivals preserved balance. A society cannot live on duty alone. It must laugh, drink, dance, and forget, if only briefly. The gods themselves demanded it. Hathor's smile is not carved into temples for nothing. A quirky story circulates as the festival winds down. Once, during a great feast, villagers drank so much that they mistook sunrise for another torch, and kept celebrating until midday. Some say Hathor herself hid the sun out of pity, letting them sleep. Truth or joke, the tale lives on, retold at every festival's end. You walk away in the pale dawn, ears still ringing with drums, lips sticky with figs, head buzzing with beer. The village lies in peaceful disarray, pots overturned, garlands wilting, sleepers sprawled in alleys. Yet beneath the mess lies renewal. Egypt wakes lighter, grief softened, toil forgotten for a heartbeat. Life, for once, has been not survival, but joy. And as the Nile glimmers, you understand. Egyptians honoured their gods not only with offerings and tears, but with laughter, song, and celebration. In festivals, they embraced what makes life worth protecting. The festival's echoes linger faintly in the air, garlands wilted, drums silenced, the scent of spilled beer souring in the dust. But now, as the sun dips below the western horizon, Egypt exhales. A hush spreads slowly, creeping from alleys to fields, until it settles like a soft blanket across the land. Night has come, and with it a different Egypt, quieter, but no less alive. You step toward the riverbank, following the murmurs of water and the flicker of torches, to witness how a civilization built its rest. The Nile itself gleams under moonlight, a silver ribbon stretched through blackness. Palms sway gently, their shadows trembling across the water. Fishermen draw in their nets, muttering about luck, sometimes hauling in glittering tilapia, sometimes only weeds. They pull their boats ashore, tie them loosely, and vanish into darkness. By day the river is labour, by night it is lullaby, its eternal whisper carrying through sleeping villages. On the banks, families settle into the rhythm of evening. Inside mud-brick homes, lamps sputter with oil, casting flickering light on soot-darkened walls. A mother hushes her child with a lullaby, her voice low and rhythmic, like water lapping reeds. The tune is old, older than memory, passed from grandmother to mother to daughter. In a corner a father stretches his tired limbs, sighs deeply, then drifts into sleep with the heaviness of one who has bent beneath the sun all day. Not all slumber immediately. Couples murmur softly, sharing stories, teasing, or simply lying side by side in silence. Children giggle under blankets, prolonging wakefulness with whispered jokes until a parent's stern word silences them. A scribe in his home scratches one last line onto a shard of pottery before blowing out his lamp. A potter stacks his tools neatly, whispering a prayer that tomorrow's kiln does not crack his work. Even at night, Egypt's pulse continues, gentler but steady. Dogs bark at shadows, cats slink along rooftops, donkeys sigh heavily in their pens, the animal chorus softens but never fades. Insects hum insistently, a sound as constant as the river's flow. Above, the stars explode in brilliance, unhindered by smoke or city light. Egyptians gaze upward, reading stories in constellations, Orion as Osiris, the Milky Way as a celestial Nile. The heavens are not empty. They are mirrors, reflecting God's journeys across eternity. Priests in temples remain awake, tending fires before statues. They chant softly, their voices almost lost to distance, but the sound threads faintly across the night. The gods, even in darkness, must be fed, clothed, sung to. Offerings of bread and beer rest on altars. Incense smoulders. The temple never truly sleeps. It guards the balance of cosmos while villagers dream. Yet there is danger too. Bandits sometimes strike at night, slipping silently into villages. Families sleep lightly, ears tuned for unusual sounds. A father rises once to check the lock on his door, mutters a prayer to Bes for protection, and lies back down. Fear is small but present, tucked into corners like shadows. The Nile gives life, but the desert always lurks beyond, carrying whispers of raiders and strangers. Historians still debate whether common Egyptians feared night as a realm of demons or embraced it as respite. Texts describe both, spells to ward off wandering spirits, but also hymns praising the moon. Perhaps both feelings coexisted, the awe of beauty mingling with unease of darkness. You feel it now, the serenity of stars, the prickling at the back of your neck when reeds rustle unexpectedly. A quirky belief drifts back to you. Some Egyptians placed garlic under pillows to ward off evil spirits. Tonight, in one mud brick home, a woman does just that, tucking cloves beneath the mat before kissing her children goodnight. The pungent scent mingles with smoke, odd but oddly comforting. Protection doesn't need to be elegant, only effective. On rooftops, where cool air flows freer, some families sleep under open sky. Mats are spread, bodies sprawled, snores rising. Children point upward before drifting off, insisting they see Hathor's face in the stars. Parents smile, humour them, then slip into slumber themselves. Dreams mingle with the heavens, bridging earth and sky. Further along the river, a patrol of soldiers passes, their sandals crunching softly. Spears gleam faintly in moonlight, shields slung over shoulders. They move quietly, shadows among shadows, ensuring no raiders slip near. Their presence is both reassurance and reminder that even under stars, vigilance is never abandoned. You pause at the water's edge. The current sighs, reeds sway, frogs croak in chorus. The river reflects the moon, broken occasionally by ripples of fish. You dip your hand, feeling the coolness, the eternal pulse. Egyptians believe the Nile itself is a god, flowing from chaos to order, from night to day, from death to life. Standing here, you understand why. In the distance, faint music stirs, perhaps remnants of the festival, or simply neighbours prolonging joy. A flute drifts across water, soft, melancholic. It blends with the river's murmur, carrying you toward calm. Even in celebration's afterglow, there is gentleness, a reminder that joy does not need to shout to endure. As the night deepens, silence expands. Torches sputter out one by one, homes dim, alleys darken. The village sleeps, yet the land does not. The Nile whispers, the stars blaze, jackals cry from distant hills. Egypt rests, but Egypt also endures, its night as rich as its day. You lie back on the bank, staring upward. The Milky Way arcs across sky, luminous and infinite. You imagine souls of the dead sailing there, their boats gliding on a celestial river. Somewhere, a grandmother watches her descendants sleep. A warrior walks beside Orion. A child who died too young chases stars instead of geese. The afterlife is not far away. It is just above, stitched into constellations. And so, the day closes. Not with monuments or battles, but with quiet breath. With murmurs of families, with cats slinking, dogs sighing, priests chanting faintly, soldiers pacing slowly, river flowing eternally. Night over the Nile is not empty. It is full, of memory, of mystery, of dreams. You close your eyes, the weight of all you have seen pressing softly against you. Dawn in the fields, laughter in the market, chants in temples, games in squares, quarrels in alleys, music in courtyards, tears in tombs, joy in festivals. Egypt lives, breathes, and now dreams. And in the hush of its night, you too are drawn into rest. And now, as the story draws to its close, let the pace slow. Imagine the Nile once more, wide and calm, its surface glassy under the pale glow of the moon. The clamour of markets, the cries of children, the chants of priests, all of it has faded, leaving only the hush of water and the quiet hum of night insects. You walk once more along the bank, but your steps are slower now, measured, gentle. The torches in the village are out. Houses rest in shadow, their families bundled in sleep, breaths rising and falling like waves. Cats curl at thresholds, geese tuck heads beneath wings, and even the donkeys, so stubborn by day, stand peacefully at rest. All creation seems to exhale at once. Lift your gaze to the heavens. The stars scatter endlessly, yet they do not feel cold. They feel like lanterns hung by unseen hands, steady and reassuring. The Milky Way arcs overhead, and you can imagine it as a river of light, flowing eternally, guiding both the living and the departed. The gods, distant but watchful, seem closer in this quiet, their presence woven into starlight. Your breathing softens in and out, matching the slow current of the Nile. Each exhale carries away the weight of fields and temples, of work and worry. Each inhale gathers the coolness of night, the promise of rest. The land itself seems to cradle you, sand beneath, stars above, river beside. Let yourself drift now, as Egypt drifts into stillness. The journey has been long, filled with noise and labour, but the night is kind. Close your eyes, surrender to its calm. The Nile flows on, eternal, and so too does your rest.